Hey, what's up? This is Andy Hurley from Fall Out Boy, and you're listening to the Expansion Project.
Welcome to another episode of the Expansion Project. I'm your host, Fat Tony. On this show, I have casual yet deep conversations with professional athletes, coaches, entrepreneurs, investors, authors, bloggers, and anybody that I find successful in hopes of expanding my mind and yours while motivating and inspiring people along the way. My guest today is a new friend that I recently got connected with through Instagram, which we're going to talk about that in the episode and explain exactly how that went down. His name is Mike Doyle. He's 36 years old and he's from New Jersey. Right now, he's actually not in New Jersey. About 9 weeks ago, he did something that a lot of people say they're going to do or dream about doing, but just never do. He sold a lot of things, gave away a lot of things, and kept about 5% of his belongings, packed it up in his car, and just started driving. Now, he doesn't have a full game plan of where he's going. He doesn't know when his money's going to run out. But he's on the road trying to find a new passion and a new drive in life. And from what it sounds like, it seems like he's pretty close to figuring that out. He's got a lot of stuff in the works. He's still running his company called Drive 80, which is a video animation company. He's running that from the road, and that's going well. But he's also putting a lot of effort and energy and focus into his blog, paleoriot.com. And it seems like he's well on his way to making that a brand and a business and getting some really cool stuff out there to the masses through that channel. Now, since we recently got connected and we don't know each other that well, Mike also had a lot of questions for me. So I talk a lot about traveling and how I can relate to his travels and stuff. And we talked a little bit about finances too. And one thing that came up that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised at is that I actually told everyone what my personal net worth is. And I know that I ask a lot of financial questions on this show. So I only think it's fair that I'm just as transparent as I hope that my guests are when it comes to these type of things. So we talk about a lot of different things. This episode runs a bit long, but I think there's some great material in here and content that a lot of people can relate to, and it's going to resonate with a ton of you guys. Before we get into the actual interview, I want to get a few bits of business out the way first. And my first business is iTunes reviews. So I want to say thank you guys for all the great feedback. I know I keep saying it on every episode, but it really is overwhelming. I keep getting emails and text messages and Facebook messages and Instagram posts from people all over the world that are excited about this project and are becoming loyal listeners of the podcast. And so I really appreciate that. And there's people all over the world also leaving reviews on iTunes, which I think the way it works is that when you get more reviews and 5-star ratings on iTunes, it bumps up the show in the iTunes directory, and that allows more people to find the show. And the more people that find it, the more people will listen, and hopefully the more people will get inspired and motivated. So I want to read a couple of the reviews that I got this past week, which I'm really excited about. First, none other than Bart Taylor, the nemesis in the movie Rad, wrote a iTunes review that says, "As an aging BMXer, I really enjoy listening to the personalities I have grown to know from the distance of videos and magazines. As an adult, I enjoy the advice and suggestions about finances to properly set yourself up for your ideal end game. Overall, I feel like I'm in a similar transition of 100% BMX life to semi-responsible adult. Therefore, I look forward to new episodes filled with life tips and wild stories." So thanks to Bart Taylor for that. And now we actually, ironically, have 3 people named Joe that left reviews this week. So Joe Sisman, that is Footprints in the Spam, says that Fat does a really good job of getting pro athletes to explain what makes them tick and how that applies to all areas of their lives, not just on their bike. It's well worth your time to check these out and start to adopt the mindset that drove himself and his guests to where they are today. It's an accomplished group of people telling you how they did it. So thanks to Joe for that. And if you want to laugh at some inside jokes that only Joe himself gets, you can follow Joe on Instagram at Footprints in the Spam. Also, Joe Nix, at Joe Nix on Twitter, says, Fat's interviewing sheds light on the questions everyone seems to ignore. What are you going to do after BMX? It's great to finally get an idea of how the greats go about managing their money and playing the game as a business as well as a passion. It's also fantastic to learn that some of the best to do it also have the same voice in their head telling them there's no reason to give up and that they can do anything. These podcasts are a must listen to anyone with a passion, anyone getting into business, or even anyone just wanting to get a better look on the personal side of self-made superstars. So thanks to Joe for that. And he does talk about BMX in there, but my hope is that I'm going to reach people outside of BMX with this podcast as well. And very soon I'll have a lot more guests that aren't in the BMX industry, like my guest today. And last but not least, another review this week comes from Joe West, and that is at I am Joe West, a really talented rider out in the Midwest. He says, I'm not one for keeping up with a podcast very well, but Fat has really captured my attention with this. Very interesting stuff for a wide demographic. So thanks to all you guys for your reviews. If you guys want to leave a review and have me read it here on the show, just go to iTunes. I think you can do it on your iPad. I haven't seen how to do it on an iPhone. But I know you can do it just on your computer through iTunes, and that would really mean a lot to me, and it'll definitely help out the show. And speaking of helping out the show, one thing you can do to help us out is to just tell a friend, whether that's speaking to somebody in person or posting it on your social networks. Like I said, the more people that hear this, the more people that we can touch and inspire and motivate, and it's just going to keep me going that much stronger and keep me excited to do this stuff. And with that said, I did start this project as a personal project to grow myself and learn about things myself. But the more that I keep hearing this feedback and the more that I keep seeing these reviews on iTunes and stuff, it really makes me see that I can have an impact on people, which I always knew was a potential side effect, but I really just didn't know how much I was going to be able to do that. And so now that I'm seeing all these positive comments, it really does just make me super, super excited to keep pushing forward, keep getting on interesting guests, and keep putting more time and energy into this project. So thanks for all that feedback. Another way you can help out the show is by going to the show's website at theexpansionprojectpodcast.com. I know it's a long URL, but the lady that owns expansionproject.com would not sell it to me. So theexpansionprojectpodcast.com. Go there, and there's an Amazon link on the side of the page. And if you click that link and order anything through Amazon, they'll kick back a few pennies from your purchase to me. And that's going to help keep things rolling and help keep up the server space and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't cost you guys anything extra, but it's going to help me out. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out to Nutrisuma. That's a protein company that's been hooking me up with some amazing pea protein and some supplements that I've been taking. And you can go to nutrisuma.com and use the promo code FATTONY1. That's just FATTONY, the number 1, no spaces or anything. And you'll get 20% off your purchases on nutrisuma.com. Again, I take their pea protein, and I use their creatine and their amino acids and their super green supplement as well. So I think that's all the business right now. And I will finally introduce my guest who's been waiting here in my living room ever so patiently. So Michael Doyle, thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Woo! Thanks, man.
Yeah. So let's quickly tell the audience how we got connected.
Yeah. So I think this was back in January, I guess it was.
I think so.
It was like January, December. I am very open. I started my blog a year ago, Paleo Riot, and every time I'm around, I post very, very transparent stuff about my life, and I put it on my blog, and then I kind of I'll share it through Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And the CrossFit that I was going to, the owner there, we got to know each other really well, and he got to know how very transparent I am, and I'm also my humor is very dark, and so we became very close. And you posted something. You posted this picture of you jumping on these 2 tires, and it's this really cool shot. And you put this thing on, and I've decided to live my life very open and transparent. Just the way you said that, he tagged me in the picture. How you just in Instagram, you just put someone's name, and
right.
It's like they tagged you here, or they mentioned you in a comment. So I went to it, and I saw that, and it was around the time I've gone through a lot of shit this year, and I just little things, like kind of the universe is throwing things my way. So I saw that, and I immediately went to your website and read all about your life, and I saw pictures of you traveling and doing CrossFit and CrossFit photography. These are all the things that I've done. Like, I've been in CrossFit for over 4 years. I've done photography for many CrossFits. I've done competitions, photography, video, and all this other shit. So I reached out to you just like, hey, dude, I'm at this turning point in my life, and I really admire what you're doing, and I just need some advice, and I want to talk to someone who's living the dream, and that's pretty much where it started.
Yeah. And was that blog post about posting my goals online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So just to fill in the audience a little bit more. So yeah, earlier this year, I posted my goals for 2015, which anybody that knows me knows that I'm a very goal-oriented person. And every year for the past 7 or 8 years, I've written out goals and, just a Word document. And I keep it on my computer, and I look at it throughout the year. And it helps keep me on track. And, I just strive to hit those goals throughout the year. And I don't always hit them. But as much as I've talked about setting goals, I've never shared my entire list of goals with anybody but a couple of friends that I kind of help talk things out with. And so this year I decided, you know what, I'm going to, as much as I've been an open book my whole life about everything, I've never posted that publicly. And I felt like that was like a really deep inside look at kind of who I am and who I want to strive to be. And I thought that it was a big step. And I think that when you're kind of encouraging other people to set goals and to go after dreams and stuff, I think the more transparent you can be, the more people can trust you and feel comfortable taking advice from you or maybe modeling themselves after certain parts of your life or whatever.
Yeah, I think when you add transparency, people can relate to it because you're very vulnerable. And that's what connected me to you, because I was like, wow, this is another person who's very, who is an open book.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's funny because in doing that, you were like, am just going to put this out there. And then that connected us and actually rocketed me to do this whole thing that I'm on now, which is like many steps. So it's funny how things work out where, you have this idea in your head and you sit there and you stew on it and you finally do it after questioning it. And all of a sudden, all this amazing stuff just starts transpiring, and things that you don't even realize. Like, I'm sure there's other people out there who saw it and they might have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. And maybe on the podcast, they'll see this and they'll probably write their story like, yeah, that actually did something for me, and I've been more organized, or I've been more this or that, the other thing, And I think that it's cool when people do that because they sit there and they just, like I said, they'll question themselves. Should I do this? It's like, yes, you should do that. You should absolutely do that, because it's like, what's the worst thing that can happen,
Yeah. So, of course, I'll have the link to that particular blog post in the show notes on the expansionprojectpodcast.com or on the iTunes page or whatever. And my blog, if you want to check out anything else, is just blog.fattonybmx.com. But yeah, so you emailed me and were basically like, I remember the way you worded the email. It was almost like you were really unsure of yourself, or it almost seemed like you thought that I was like a little bit more inaccessible than I might have been.
Yeah.
Because you were like, yeah, I totally understand if you're not into this, or if it sounds super weird, or you don't want to talk to me on the phone or whatever. And I was just like, I looked at your website. I was like, dude, you have a blog. I have a blog. You eat paleo. I eat vegan. You do CrossFit. I do CrossFit. You do video animation. I do video production. Like, I mean, we're very similar people. Like, why not network, And I was just like, yeah, dude, give me a call. Like, and I remember even you were like, oh, should we set a time? And I was like, we don't need to set a time. Like, just give me a call. Like, we're basically friends that haven't met yet,
That was the funniest thing too, because you emailed me and you said, dude, we don't have to make this formal. Here's my number. And I was like, holy shit. So I sat on it for a day. I'm like, I got to call this guy. I was like, should we plan it? You're like, just call me whenever, man. I'm like, all right. And I remember I sat down on my couch. And I'm like, all right, I'm calling this dude. And I called you up. You're like, hey, what's up, man? I'm like, hey, it's that guy, that random guy. Like, what's going on? And we talked for like an hour.
At least an hour, for sure.
And we just like got into it and started talking. And it was cool because I got to learn about, what you see sometimes anywhere that's on a website or a magazine or whatever it is, wherever you see someone's life. It's like sometimes you're getting the surface part of it, and then it might not come across exactly how their life is, So when we spoke about it, you're like, yeah, I travel. And then you really broke down to certain things. You're like, yeah, I do this, but you're like, sometimes it can get lonely, or sometimes it's this. And I'm like, wow, man, like that's really honest, And it's like when people see magazines of stars, they think like, oh, they have this lavish life and it's this, but you don't see the back end where sometimes like they don't want to get out of bed that day, or it's not, they might be loaded with money, but they're still depressed and things like that. So it's cool to know that people are down to the root of it. Everyone's like, they have that normalcy that everyone's like, oh, you are obtainable. No one is this like being that you can't be reached.
And honestly, that was part of this podcast for me too, was figuring out a way to be more open and more transparent. I've said on the podcast, and everybody knows this, that I'm a content creator, and I still have a blog, and I used to run a BMX website, and I posted a lot of stuff on there, and a lot of the things on there I had to cater to a certain audience, and I had to kind of speak in a certain voice to be on that website. And you sort of keep a certain image on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever. And I felt like having a podcast would allow me, in long form interviews like we're doing now, to just really be myself and to kind of expose who I really am to people. And maybe that's not important to people, and maybe the important part is just to hear the inspiring stories or whatever.
I think it is. I think it totally is. I think it's good to be real. 'Cause
Yeah.
everyone wants to hear real, you know?
Yeah, and of course, the podcast that I listened to that sort of inspired me to do one, they were very real and authentic and just putting themselves out there, and I really kind of resonated with that. So that's part of what I wanted to do with this. So going back to your story, it seemed like at that time you did mention just now that you were going through a lot of shit, and I know you went through a divorce that you mentioned a few times since we've been hanging out and stuff. So can you kind of tell me the catalyst of that divorce and kind of that downward spiral that you were on that sort of propelled you into where you're at now?
Yeah. So I had been dating someone. I was together with my wife at the time. We were together for 6 years at that point between dating and then being married. And it was weird because we had a really good relationship. Like we were that couple that people would come up to us and say like, how are you guys so happy? We want to be you. And so when 6 years into it, she just randomly on like it was a Wednesday, she just kind of like she started getting a little weird, a little up to it, and all of a sudden it was just like, I'm leaving. And I was like, holy fuck, like you gotta be kidding me. And it really rocked the hell out of me, and I really freaked out because I was like, wait a minute, does that mean, because you start thinking of the future, you're like, wow, we're never gonna have kids together, we've talked about this for years, and we're never gonna have a house together, we're never gonna do all these things we talked about, and I never get to have you around me all the time, and it's really devastating. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to cut you off. So, and the reason why I bring this up is because I want people to be able to relate to a situation that, there's a turning point in your life that kind of sends you on a path either down the drain or the other direction and skyrockets you up. And, I'll let you finish in just a second. And part of the reason I asked this too is because I have a very similar story where I moved to California and was dating a girl at the time, and she had all the plans to move out to California. And eventually, out of the blue, kind of like you said, it was, a Monday, and she had a one-way or a flight to come out to visit me on a Friday. And that Monday, she called and was just like, hey, I'm not coming on Friday. Like, we're done. Like, it's over. And, I mean, you said devastated. Dude, that's what it was. Like, I was completely just shook up. And so I was fucked up for a while. And eventually it got to the point where it sent me on a path to, like, great heights. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to get at with you. And so sorry I didn't, like, allude to that ahead of time. So for anybody listening, we're not just having a conversation about moping about women. This does lead to some good stuff about, finding – good within the bad and, propelling yourself on a different path in life.
Yeah, I think that the two of us sitting here is a testament to that because, just to really clarify for anyone out there. So imagine, if you're in a marriage, I could say, imagine the person you're married to. Some people hate being married. I know some people, they shouldn't even be married, and they just kind of hold on to it. But there's people out there who have a really special relationship. Now, imagine that relationship, and the people listening, they'd be like, yeah, I have a great marriage with my wife or my husband. Now imagine that tomorrow that person comes in out of the blue and says, I'm leaving. Now just that feeling and then put into reality, that's what it was, and that's how people, that's my only way to describe what that feels like. And like you said, you can do two things. And I wrote this like little ebook. It was like and I got really big into meditation, and right as that started to happen, I started getting meditation, and then I went full force into it. And I was meditating twice a day for like a total of like almost 30 minutes on the morning and night. And it really kept my head straight. And so I wrote like a little ebook about it. And I wrote it and I said, it's two things you could do. You can either like succumb to darkness or you can get the fuck up. And I was like, I could have taken 20 steps left on a really dark path, or I could take one step into a really positive path. And it's going to take me a really long time to take that next step. But I was like, I'd rather be going in the positive direction than really far down that dark road, because that's going to take a long time to get back, because I could have gotten really big into drinking. I'm not a drug person. I never was. So that wasn't even an issue. And I wasn't like suicidal by any means, but you get into a fucking dark place, and I've never had my life be this dark in this last year, and I'm still shaking it off. And I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, depression gets in your bones, and it really hit me hard. I was like, God damn, like that's how I feel. Like some days, like I can't even get up. It's like really there. And so around that time when I called you, it's funny because that was, like I said, it's January, and now it's May. What's today? The 15th. We said. I was in New Jersey talking on the phone in the dead of winter in January, and now it's May, and not even 6 months later, and I'm sitting in your living room and doing this podcast, and that's amazing how people can think that, oh, I can't do this, but that's a true testament. Like this is a true story, you know. And I reached out to someone for inspiration, and it launched me. And what happened as soon after we spoke on?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give me the timeline. So you contacted me in January. When did the divorce happen, or when did the ex-wife leave or whatever?
She left a year before I contacted you. So
Okay.
she left January 27th. We got divorced July 31st, and then.
Okay, so
then
it was like
it.
a whole year of kind of like you just kind of in a funk and a downward spiral kind of thing. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
It was pretty gnarly. It was like really gnarly, and a lot like I go. Oh, and I should have probably mentioned that 3 months before my wife left, my dad died. So he dies. She was there. We were all at his bedside when they unplugged him, and it was very sudden. And then 3 months later, your wife leaves, and you're all of a sudden you're sitting there, and it's like you literally have nothing,
Right.
and it's crazy. And so the timeline was a year later. We started talking. I think within a month, I decided that I was like, I'm gonna sell everything I own, and then I'm just gonna travel, and that's what I'm currently doing right now.
Yeah. So, and I definitely want to get more into that, but I want to back up and get into a little bit more specifics. When you started meditating and stuff, what method did you use to meditate? Like, give me some specifics on what you did, what time of day you did it, how you did it.
Are you big into meditation?
No, I've been really curious about it lately.
Okay.
And I always say that if I have a really strong reason for something, I can just do it right away. Like when I found the reasons to go vegan, I just dropped everything and went vegan, like drop of a hat, you know what I mean? Like pretty much overnight. And I keep hearing people talk about how much meditation helps them and how much they get out of it. And I just haven't been sold enough to like just really buckle down and do it.
Just gotta do it.
And the one thing, the one thing that sold me like on the reason was that I listened to an audiobook of Mark Divine, the guy that does the SEAL Fit program,
Okay.
which is kind of combining Navy SEAL training and CrossFit. He talks all about a warrior's mindset and like a champion's mindset and stuff. And he's basically said that when you can learn to meditate and you can learn to shut off your mind or turn off those little voices in your head when you're sitting still, then when you're in a stressful situation, like in an intense workout, then you can also tell those voices to shut up. And like, on Fran, when that set of 15 thrusters gets really fucking heavy and you want to put the barbell down, you can just shut your brain up and just keep going. And so that was like kind of the one reason I was like, okay, now I have a reason to meditate. And so I've done it a handful of times, and I've tried to use this app called Headspace, and they've got like a 10-day challenge thing or whatever to like get you started. And it's been like a month and a half, and I've only made it to like day number 6 or something. And I enjoy it when I do it. I just the reason or the why just isn't quite there enough for me to say like, yes, I'm gonna absolutely do this.
You have to. So for me, it was a necessity. That was my way to not drink.
Okay.
So the way I got to there's a book called The Presence Process that I used, and
who's that by?
This guy Michael Brown.
Okay.
And it's kind of weird because you read about 100 pages on his philosophy on life, and I don't know, it's weird. And my ex-wife, she read it, and then she introduced it to me. So I was about a week into it, and she was 2 weeks into it before she left. So I think there was a trigger in there somewhere, and I think seeing my dad died like fucked her head up. But at the same time, like, you read this 100 pages. I blasted through it in 6 hours. I sat down on a Wednesday, and I just read it from like 11 to 5. And it took her 2 weeks to get through that first 100 pages. So there's something in that really freaked her out about life. And it talks about, things like this. The guy's like, you shouldn't have to put yourself in a video and you shouldn't have to podcast and all that stuff. But I'm like, why are you writing a book? It's like bands who say they don't want to give autographs. It's like, well, why'd you write music? Like, we don't want people to know our music. Well, so then don't record it, know? Like, so don't give me that bullshit. So anyway, different. The guy, so then it goes in this 10-week thing where you read a chapter, and then after the chapter, you meditate for 15 minutes, and you just, in silence, and you breathe. And at each breath, you think of this word. So you say, I am here in this now, or whatever it was. So each breath, you say, I am, like, and you constantly breathe in and out. You don't stop for 15 minutes. So the oxygen starts filling your brain. So that like was tough in the beginning, but then it became like addictive. Then after that, I would do calm.com, which just does like serene noises, and to listen to like a lake or an ocean. I would just listen to that for 10 minutes. I did that. So the moment.
And as you're doing this, are you sitting on a chair, sitting on the floor? Like, paint me a picture.
Honestly, man, like I had a chair set up in the corner of my apartment, which I'd go and sit in, and I put like my feet on the ground, or I'd sit cross-legged. And it's not about that. Like, when you become really good at meditation, then worry about it. Then worry about the specifics. But in the beginning, it's like when you start CrossFit, it's like, don't worry about a muscle up. Just show up to the gym, and eventually you get the muscle up. And when you get a muscle up, then you learn the specifics on how to keep going with the muscle up. You get it?
Yeah.
So you just have to you sit down however you want to. I would take my shoes off and just put my feet to the ground, just be grounded. And I'd sit up straight, or I'd slouch, or whatever it was. I'd close my eyes, and I would just do the whole meditation thing for the 15 minutes. And if you don't want to buy that book and do that, I tell people, just wake up in the morning, sit up in your bed cross-legged, put your pillow under your butt so you can like kind of keep your back a little straight, and either sit in silence for 15 minutes and put your timer on your iPhone, or get to calm.com. It's free, and again, you can listen to the ocean, you can listen to a lake, whatever it is, you can listen to rain, and you can time yourself, and it'll keep track of it too. So say like, congratulations, you finished another one, and just do 5 minutes, and then at night do it again, or just do it once a day, and then all of a sudden you'll start getting more and more into it.
Yeah. When I did it, I would go into my office, and I've got a big panoramic print on the wall of kind of a jungly forest scene or whatever. And I would start in my desk chair, feet on the floor, usually shoes off but socks on. I hate being barefoot. And I would just kind of look at the picture for a little while, and then I would close my eyes and I would get into it, and I would just be on the desk chair. But again, I don't know what it is. And I blame part of it on my dog, and I know that's just an excuse because I feel like, I wake up and I should be taking my dog out and giving him attention, and I don't know, that's a ridiculous excuse.
That's a completely ridiculous excuse.
I know.
That's fucking stupid.
Thank you. I needed that. So maybe I'll get into it. But like
here's
I said,
the thing. Think of it like this, man. Like, when you're in a WOD and when you're in your day, you're like, I got to do this, this, and this. When you're in a WOD, it's like that moment is the first time that you're in the moment. That's what meditation gives to you.
Yeah.
And my workouts started getting better because I started just zoning out everyone else around me, and I'd focus on the reps, I'd focus on the movement, I'd focus on my form, and it's almost like you're kind of in this bubble, and and it helps in that sense.
I feel like I do get into that bubble zone quite a bit when I work out, when I do Metcons and WODs and stuff. And like I said, I need a solid reason or something, and just hearing like, oh, it's going to make you relax more. It's like, well, I'm a pretty relaxed person, or it's going to make you not stress out. I'm like, well, I don't really have a job. I'm like pretty financially okay. Like I don't need to worry about a lot of things. Like I don't have a lot of stress. You know what I mean?
It doesn't have to be about stress though. It could just be to keep your head clear. Like Warren Buffett, I heard that he goes into his office every day. At the end of every day, he goes and locks himself in a room for 20 minutes and meditates. And this guy's a billionaire. He's like one of the richest people in the world. So there's never a point where you get too good at something you can't do anything.
Yeah, you're right. Fuck, I got to start doing it, man.
God damn it.
All right. So all right. You had this downward spiral for about a year. You called me. When you called me, were you kind of reaching out to other people to get like motivation?
I had an idea that anyone's obtainable, and for some reason, the CrossFit world, like CrossFit's big, but it's not too big where you can't email someone, they won't get back to you unless you're like Spieler or Froning. I mean, these guys get bombarded all the time, but I think like there's certain people out there that they kind of, it's almost they peek outside of the noise, and you're like, oh, that person is in with the community, and they also have recognition, and they're living this cool life, and it's like you kind of did that when you put that Instagram thing, and I had the idea. I was like, I think I could always reach out to someone. So that was the first time I actually tried it.
That's cool.
And it worked out. I think before that, maybe I was talking to 321 Project about potentially doing an animation for them or something. And the guy who runs it is Chris Spieler's brother-in-law.
Okay.
So as I had his attention, I said, hey, by the way, like, I have this blog, and, can I talk to Spieler? He's like, nah, man. He's like, everyone bombards him. I don't want to bother him. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to step back on that, But then, I just reached out, and I was like, this seems like he'd be – and I actually I didn't know if you were going to reach out. I was like, I don't know, this guy might be too busy or whatever.
So, I mean, until we're having this conversation right now, I didn't realize that maybe I was such a big influence on you kind of dropping everything and moving and stuff. Like
it was a big, there was a lot of pieces that led up to it, and that was one of them. It was like that, and then seeing the movie Wild, and like all this stuff.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, that makes me really, really, I don't know, just stoked and humbled, and I always tell people that the biggest compliment that I could ever get is for somebody to say that I've inspired them. So to know that you've made some positive changes in your life, and you're on this really cool traveling journey now, man, that's incredible.
Well, think about it too, man. Like we started talking, and we were like, hey, what if we did this CrossFit road trip, and we did some documentary thing, and. And we were like, we were pretty into it. And I was like, when could we do it? And you were like, maybe like June, might have some time. And that spiraled me to start thinking, all right, I need something now. I don't want to wait till June. Let me start just doing things. And it just started this. It basically kickstarted the fire, because I had the idea to do this a year ago. And I sat on it, and then the depression builds up and the anger builds up. And there's a point where you have the tipping point where you're like, I'm fed up, and I'm so fed up. And that was like, you can't light gasoline unless you have a match. So the gasoline sits there. It's not going to do anything unless there's a spark. And when that light hits, I mean, that's all that, how much gasoline's built up. I mean, I had probably gallons.
Yeah.
And that was a big fucking blow up. I mean, granted that, like I said, within a couple weeks I had sold my shit. And so
that's a cool analogy, man. I've never heard that, but I like it. So just to kind of fill in people on what you were just saying. Yeah. So after our initial conversation, we just kept in touch through emails and text messages and stuff, and basically became friends. And, being content type video guys and whatnot, we started talking about this idea of a road trip. And you were real big on the idea of like, you wanted to get out and experience life and do some traveling, kind of like I had been doing, and maybe make some cool content along the way. So we had all these cool ideas of road trip videos, which I still think we should do at some point.
Absolutely.
And at the time I was kind of like, hey, I just got back from a big trip. I need to get some finances in order. I need to get some work under my belt and stuff. And
yeah, what were you doing at that time anyway? Talk about that.
At which time?
At that point, like, because you do a lot of video stuff and you travel and things.
So basically, end of last year, right before Thanksgiving, I went to Louisiana, and then straight from Louisiana, I went to Singapore, Malaysia, Bali, and Thailand. And I was gone for a little bit over a month total. And so I came, like I said, I left right before Thanksgiving, came back right at New Year's. And when I came back, I didn't have any work lined up for the new year. I came back with the idea that I wanted to get a dog, and I don't like using the term settle down, but I wanted to stop traveling. Like I burnt myself out on traveling. For about 7 years straight, I had traveled anywhere from about 120 days to 200 days a year for 7 years straight.
Jesus.
And, a lot of that was for work when I had a full-time job. And then a lot of it was just, fun stuff where I created work on the side. And then some of it was like the trip to Asia in December where I didn't work at all. But at any rate, I got burnt out. And not only was I burnt out from traveling, I was ready to start hustling on the work side of things some more. I wanted to start a podcast. I wanted to create a new business. I wanted to get more photo and video clients and stuff. And so I was really just, filled with these creative juices that I was just ready to hit the ground running. But I didn't have anything lined up yet. And like I said, I knew I wanted to start the podcast. I knew I wanted to get more clients. And so when you called, I was kind of like, yo, I just went on this big trip. I don't want to travel. I don't really have the money to go traveling right now. And I need to get some jobs under my belt to start building up my, my reserve savings account or whatever again. So at that time, I was just kind of like, yo, let's put this on the back burner. It's a dope idea, but I got to wait. So it sounds like while I was waiting, you were like, well, I need something now.
That was kind of the spark. It was, I got to wait. And I was like, I'm done waiting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think I talked to someone prior to that too. And the more I think about it, and even just this has started, I'm like, holy shit. Like from January 1st on, it was kind of a domino effect of all these conversations I'm thinking of. And it's kind of amazing to look back and be like, holy crap, like these things just keep setting things into place, and like everything pivoted and all that stuff. But
so let's talk about you actually pulling the trigger. At what point did you decide, okay, I'm not going to wait anymore, and I'm going to sell everything, move out of my apartment or house or whatever you were at, and just start driving?
I had an epiphany the day before the Super Bowl. It was a Saturday, and what I would do on Saturdays, so I'm 36, but like I don't think that's old. But I have very old man tendencies where I like to go sit at a dark bar and eat steak and drink wine and drink old fashions and stuff. Like that's like this thing I was doing all last year. And also had this vision that I would do that and meet some like hot older chick. It actually happened too.
Nice.
But in a different way. Actually, that's a whole nother story. So I was there on Saturday, and I just would go and sit down and be by myself. And I just started thinking, I'm like. And I was like, what if I did it? What if I just left? Like, what would it look like? And a lot of the success stories I read is, get a piece of paper out, write down 3 years from now how you want your life to look. Don't worry about how you get there. Just write down what the morning feels like, what the air smells like, who are the people around you, how are you perceived, and make yourself a billionaire, make yourself have a private jet, and make yourself uncomfortable, and then feel what it feels like. Because think about the moment when you were younger and you were like, I want to be this. And you didn't know how to do it. You didn't care. You're like, I just know I'm going to do that. And then you got there, and hopefully you got there. And any place anyone is in their life, they got themselves there. But they didn't worry about the how. So what the problem is that people start doing that, and it freaks them out now as they're older, and they start going, oh, I can't. It's like, shut the fuck up. Yes, you can. Just figure it out, you know? And that was the kind of moment where I was like, let me just think of what my life would be like. And Super Bowl Sunday came, and they were streaming it for free, and I had people over, and so I'm hosting this party, and all of my CrossFit friends came over, and you know, and the thing keeps like crapping out and all this stuff. And it's like I was there, but I wasn't there because I kept thinking about it. And the next day, I woke up and I was sharing an office space with a buddy, and I went in and talked to him. And I said, look, man, I'm thinking of selling my stuff. And he's a really good friend of mine. And he goes, you know, and he played devil's advocate. He's like, you know, man, you're kind of struggling as it is right now financially and the business and blah, blah. He's like, I don't know if you're really that's a really good idea. And I was like, oh, kind of wanted some positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Went home and called my friend who lives out here in Manhattan Beach, who I was staying with when I first got here a couple weeks ago. And I was like, what should I do? I need a positive. She's like, do it. Why wouldn't you do it? And so
you already knew the answer. You were just looking for somebody else to kind of.
Sometimes you just need reinforcement.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, should I get up and run a mile today? It's like, you should fucking get up and run a mile. You should run 5.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but you sit there and you need validation.
Right.
And so then the next day I told my landlord a month prior that I was moving out because I found an apartment down the street because I was still living in the apartment that me and my wife were living in. So that was a huge. Don't ever do that. If you ever break up with someone, get out.
Yeah.
Don't stay there because it gets really dark, like I said. And yeah, then I had an apartment lined up, but it was a word of mouth, and I drove to the guy's place the next day, face to face. I said, look, man, I'm just not going to do this. I'm sorry. So at that moment, I was homeless in a month. And then it took
I just got goosebumps.
Yeah,
that's so awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like I drove there, I got out, face to face. I was like, I'm gonna do this like I don't want to say like a man because that's not sexist, but I'm gonna do this face to face. And I was like, I can't do it. And he really appreciated it. We actually still friends on Facebook. And I got in my car and I just drove off and I just screamed. I was like, holy shit, I just did it. And then I went home and then I wrote a blog post about it. And I launched it on February 5th and said, this is where it was something like, welcome to Wanderlust. And I was like, so last year's been kind of crazy. Selling everything, and the flood of people that contact you, it's amazing. They're just like, I've been depressed for the last year. Like that's so crazy. It's awesome you're doing that. And you're like, holy shit. So you hit a nerve and everyone's paying attention. Yeah. And within 26 days I sold and gave away everything, and then.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about that process of getting rid of stuff. Like, was that an emotional process? Tell me the logistics of it.
I mean, I had glasses from our wedding, plates from our wedding. I had a TV that I'd bought. I had the couch that we bought together. I had the bed that was mine prior to meeting my wife.
Did you just make Facebook posts and say, hey, this stuff's available?
So this is exactly what I did. So I announced it on Facebook, which got people's attention. I took a ton of pictures of my stuff, and I categorized my apartment where – think of your apartment as a square, and the front door is where you bring everything that you're going to bring to the Salvation Army. I'll get into that in a second. Then the right corner is what I was going to keep, give to my mom to hold on to. The left corner was everything I was selling, and then my room is what I was going to take with me.
Okay.
So I sectioned it off like that because in the beginning you have to chunk it. So every weekend I'd be like, all right, I'm just going to focus on the kitchen, and I got boxes, and I focused on the kitchen, and then I'd focus on a closet, and I'd focus on a drawer. You have to really section things off. So I had the boxes of the things I want to keep, which were yearbooks and, birth certificates and things like that. And I put that in a corner. Then my living room was just full of everything I was going to sell. So I took pictures of everything, posted on Facebook. When people contacted me, I was like, first come, first serve. They'd contact me and they're like, how much is that? I'd be like, $30. It's like, okay. I'd take a sticky note out. I'd write it down, write their name, and I'd put it on top of it. And so I knew exactly who had to get something. Because if you don't do that, because 5 people are going to reach out to you, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap, who's getting this, So I did that, and then I would take things, I put it by the door, and I tried a bunch of different services to give stuff away to. Salvation Army takes everything. I don't know if you guys have them out here because you have Goodwill, right?
Yeah.
Some places are a bit picky, but Salvation Army took everything. I literally was taking I must have done about 20 trips to Salvation Army within 3 weeks,
Nice.
So you'd have stuff at the door. And it's like a plate of spaghetti, man. You just keep eating it. It's like it doesn't go anywhere. So you put it in your car, you go, you bring it out, you come back, and you put more stuff by the door, you put more stuff in the corner, and little by little, it just started to just slowly go away. And all the big things, I just put a smaller price tag on it, and then I made about $3,000, and I gave away, like I said, and sold 95%, and I took the other 5%, and I packed in my car. The day I was leaving, I was still packing my car.
Wow.
It was nuts.
So what all did you keep to bring with you on this trip? Or not on this trip. I don't want to say it's a trip, but what all did you keep as you're going in this journey of your life?
Clothes. I took a lot of my cooking wear because I'm really big into cooking. I took like a foam roller, a yoga mat. I took a lot of spices. I have this teddy bear that was made of one of my dad's favorite shirts. So that's its shotgun when I'm driving. I took a kettlebell. I have a 70-pound kettlebell sitting. I've used it twice. But yeah, it's like bare essentials, man. I mean, and
you say that nonchalantly, but a kettlebell and a teddy bear and spices do not sound like bare essentials to me.
If you live like a healthy lifestyle, like those are the staples.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You've been on the road now, just kind of living in Airbnb, staying with friends, and just driving for what, couple months now, right?
I've been on the road for Sunday will be 9 weeks.
Okay. Yeah. And so, I know, like you said, cooking and eating healthy and keeping a healthy lifestyle is really important to you. How have you managed that while you've been a nomad?
You get used to – so the first 3 weeks I was staying with friends and family the whole time. And when I first got to their house, I was kind of like, all right, how am I just going to start cooking in their kitchen? So I just told them, I was like, hey, I'm going to cook. And they're like, all right, cool. So I have my routine. I have like the shopping, like the cloth shopping bags. One bag has my good knife, my cutting board, a bowl, whatever it is, and the other one has the spices. So I bring them every time I go to a new place. I bring in a couple bags with my clothes, I have my guitar and all that stuff. I bring that and keep it in my room, and I have these by the door. So and then the beginning of the week, depending on how long you're to stay somewhere. If I'm somewhere for 3 days at least, I'll go shopping, and I just learned about Sprouts, which is amazing, which is so freaking cheap. But usually I would go to Whole Foods and like find a farmer's market for stuff like that. And so I'd buy stuff, keep it in their fridge. It depends on how long I'm going to be there for. Again, like in the morning, I just make breakfast. But I have those 2 bags by my room. So when I go to the kitchen, I bring them with me, put them down, I cook, I clean as I go, put all my stuff back in those bags. So you don't want to leave anything in the kitchen because when you drive away, all of a sudden you're about 6 hours away and someone goes, hey, I had those tong things, which just happened to me when I left. I was like, God damn it. But, that's how you do it. So you have to shop, and you just got to get over the fact that you're using someone's kitchen.
So, yeah, I did not exactly similar things, but just from traveling so much.
Yeah, because when you're traveling, man, you're overseas like for a month. Like, what did you do?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so you have your routine of your bags or whatever. Same thing. I have my routines, and I think finding a routine in your lack of routine is really important.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So your current situation is that you have no permanent address. You're just living out of your truck and going house to house and staying for places, maybe a couple days at a time, maybe a month at a time. So in that, you have to have some sort of normalcy. Otherwise, your life is just too hectic, too chaotic. Your brain's going to be all over the place, and you're not going to be a productive human. You know what I mean? I think it's possible for some people to do that, but they're not going to still be making money, still be making advances in their life, and still making positive choices, and still on a path to a higher themselves. You know what I mean? Or a higher version of themselves, I should say. So I think if you do come up with some kinds of routines, as long as you have some things that are normal in your life, even if everything else is abnormal, you're going to be okay. So for me, when I eat on the road, I've mentioned before on a different podcast, I eat the same thing for breakfast every day, which I might change pretty soon here. I've been considering it.
What is it?
So I eat a gluten-free oatmeal, and I pour in a 1/4 cup mix of equal parts chia seeds, hemp seeds, and flax seeds, a giant scoop of peanut butter, and mash up a banana and put it all in there.
You're a huge peanut butter fan, by the way.
Oh,
your cabinet. I'm surprised you don't have almond butter.
No, I do. It's Chef Kate's Nut Butter. It's one of my little sponsors.
Okay.
Chick from my gym has this nut butter company that's delicious.
Really?
Yeah. Shout out to chefkates.com.
You have to give me that info because I need to buy some.
Yeah. I'll hook you up with her. She's here local.
Oh, cool.
Super good stuff. It's amazing.
All right. So you prepped your breakfast.
Yeah.
You have the same thing.
So as I'm traveling, it's easy to get a Ziploc bag and say like, okay, I'm gone for 5 days or 6 days or however many days. Portion out the oatmeal. I might add 1 or 2 extra scoops in case I want an extra snack or a dessert at night, or in case the microwave blows up and the oatmeal goes all over the place, which happened 2 days ago in New Jersey. So I'm glad I had extra.
My home state.
Yeah. So it's easy to portion out. Like I said, it's the chia seeds and flax seeds and hemp seeds. Portion it out, scoop it out into little Ziploc bags. And the cool thing about that is as you go out through the trip, your bags become smaller, less room, less space, less weight or whatever. So I do that for my breakfast. And that kind of ensures me that every day I'm going to start off with something that makes me happy and makes me feel good and makes me feel healthy and strong. All you need is either a microwave, or if a hotel's shitty and doesn't have a microwave, you can use like the little coffee maker thing that just heats up water. Just make the hot water go in there, put it in your little Tupperware. I bring a Tupperware with me. I'll either bring a spoon with me, or I'll pick up like a plastic spoon at the local hotel, or even sometimes in the airport as I'm walking through the airport, I'll just stop at the restaurant, grab a couple plastic spoons and knives or whatever, and some napkins and throw it in there.
You know what actually might not be a bad idea, because you do a lot of hotels and all that. What about the dining or the breakfast area? Do they usually have a microwave there?
Yeah.
So you could just go down there and
Yeah,
sure
exactly.
they don't turn it off, right?
Yep.
Okay.
This past week I was in New Jersey for a BMX photo shoot, and they didn't have a microwave in the room, but they had one like in a little market thing downstairs, or whatever. So, sometimes you feel a little bit weird carrying your little Tupperware with oatmeal and water down the elevator, down the stairs, but no big deal. I felt even more weird after the oatmeal blew up in the microwave. I cleaned it out, walked back upstairs to get more oatmeal, came back down, like had to make a couple of trips,
Yeah.
That Tupperware is actually a big part of it. And I like to get into specifics in case anybody likes to take away these little nuggets. So when I bring my little Tupperware, I have a lid with it. So let's say you use the coffee maker to make your oatmeal, which, by the way, most hotels will have like a little, either a paper cup for their coffee or a glass, and almost all of those are like exactly 8 ounces.
Okay.
So I can use that to measure out the cup of water too. But I usually do bring a measuring cup for the scoops of oatmeal and chia seeds and everything. So if you use the coffee maker, it's different from the microwave. So you put it in the Tupperware, and then you just put the lid on and you kind of let it just soak in there for a while. And it won't get as cooked or as good as a microwave, but it'll still get the job done,
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I do for breakfast. And of course I bring my protein with me. Actually, NutriSumma has like single-use protein packets that are really good. I also use some hemp protein mix that I use, and I can just, again, portion that out into Ziploc bags and bring it with me. So at least I know that my protein and my breakfast for every day of the trip are set. When I went to Asia for a month, I brought enough oatmeal for I think like 2 weeks, and enough protein for at least one protein shake for a day for the entire month.
So when you're over there, though, like, we were kind of conversing earlier, they don't really have kitchens where you're staying, right?
Right. So what I do then is I did end up finding some oatmeal, thankfully, in Singapore. So after I ran out of oatmeal, I found it. And, it's a little harder than you might think in certain countries or certain places to find, a good oatmeal, or even a peanut butter that doesn't have like hydrogenated oil and a bunch of, high fructose corn syrup in it and stuff.
All the healthy stuff.
Good natural peanut butter is like hard to find overseas. So once I did find it, all the little bungalows and hostels and stuff that I was staying at, if they didn't have some kind of microwave, most of them had some kind of a kitchen where I just went down and I was like, hey, can you give me a cup, like 1 cup of hot or boiled water or whatever? And, they have boiling water for coffee and other things. And some hostels even have like just a little pot and a little hot plate or something where you can like boil your own water. So I specifically wake up with enough time every day. If I have something planned that day, I know that part of my day of making my breakfast and having my oatmeal is important enough that I'm going to make sure that there's some way to have my hot water, because that's all I need is 8 ounces of either hot or close to boiling water,
Yeah.
So as long as I have that, I'm good. And then throughout the day as I'm traveling, if I'm, domestically here in the U.S., Chipotle is my first go-to. I've been on many trips where I've eaten Chipotle 2 to 3 times a day, every single day of the trip.
Really?
Yeah. And, of course it gets tiring,
Yeah.
but at least I know that I'm getting good quality ingredients.
Yeah.
I know it tastes good. I know the price point is going to be cheap and affordable. Of course, if I can find good vegan restaurants or whatever, then I'll try to check those out. If not, then usually any Thai restaurant, any Indian restaurant, other ethnic things like Ethiopian restaurants. And I talked about this in a previous podcast that you guys can look at. I think it was episode 13 with JJ Palmer. Him and I are both vegan athletes, and we talked about our experiences with eating on the road and a bunch of other things. But when you're talking about international travel, it's a little bit different, and every place is its own unique situation. And there's been times when I've walked around a city for what seems like hours trying to find a decent meal, because I'm not gonna succumb to a crappy, unhealthy meal, and I'm gonna stick to my principles and morals and what I think is healthy for me.
Yeah, man, that seems like kind of brutal, especially because you are way more limited.
Yes and no.
I mean, for me as someone who's not vegan, that's my
Right.
first thing. And then people think of me paleo. They're like, "What do I feed you?" I'm like, "Jesus Christ, dude."
Yeah. Like I always tell people, it just takes a little bit of extra planning, and it takes a little bit of extra time,
Yeah.
and consideration, and and I've worked that into my process of doing everything, so it's not that big a deal with me. This past week I was on a trip where I didn't have my own car. I was with 2 other guys that weren't vegan or anything, and thankfully they were super accommodating, you know. So sometimes I kind of have to be the squeaky wheel, and people have to work around my needs. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're probably going to get a more healthy meal because they're sort of catering to me. So even if they do end up eating meat or whatever, you know, they go to Chipotle and they have a better meal than if they went to Applebee's or whatever, you know?
Yeah, it was funny because when I came down here today, you were like, you know, where do you want to go to eat? And usually when someone asks you that question, you think that you're going to go into their worlds, where normally when you go to eat with someone somewhere, they take you to this like crap ass place and you kind of figure it out. But it was cool with you. But it was like someplace healthy. You're like, yeah, dude, that's obviously a given. I was like, holy shit. It's cool having a friend who is thinking that exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
No,
Like,
my thing with you is that I knew that you eat paleo, but I know some people are pretty strict about paleo as far as, you know, maybe it's grass-fed beef or, you know, the type of meat they have has to be super high quality. Maybe they stay away from rice or grains or whatever. And going to a vegan restaurant, I know a lot of things, you know, have rice in it or might have grains or nuts or legumes or something. So I just didn't know how kind of hardcore you were.
I mean, at the end of the day, man, if I'm sitting there eating beans and quinoa, it's better than me going to Wendy's and having a burger and fries and all that other shit.
Absolutely.
You know?
All right, so let's get back on track with your current nomadic life. So you've been on the road for 9 weeks now.
Yep.
Give me a quick list of some of the cities you went to.
All right, so I'll kind of break them all down. So I'm from New Jersey, from Morristown, New Jersey, which is kind of like north central. My first drive was to Cape Cod because my mom's up there. So I drove into the snow. My first drive, it was snowing for the entire 7 hours, which normally takes me 4 to get up there, and that sucked. So actually, I went to my sister's first. So it was Bridgewater, Cape Cod. Then I went to Delaware, Middletown, Delaware, Virginia Beach, South Boston, Virginia, which I didn't even know existed. Say my buddy Jay and his wife. Then I was in Raleigh, California, Raleigh, North Carolina, which everyone told me to skip, and I loved it there. So if you have a chance to go to Raleigh.
Did you go to CrossFit Invoke, Christmas Abbott's gym?
I was going to go there because I really wanted to meet Christmas Abbott because she's my dream. But the reason I didn't go there, A, she wasn't there. She was doing some seminar across the country. And B, they didn't post their workouts on the website, and I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that. And then I went to CrossFit Raleigh. They were great.
Cool.
That was an awesome CrossFit, so I recommend definitely going there if you're there. So another thing to note is that I've been to everywhere I've gone to a CrossFit, every city I go to, and just checked it out, and it's been awesome. So Raleigh, then I went to Atlanta, stayed with my friend Sam. Then went to Mobile for a day.
I'm sorry.
Mobile. I didn't know it existed. I was in Atlanta, and there was parts of the trip. So I had Atlanta to Austin. And when I started the trip out, I said, all right, I want to go to Austin and Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only set things I want to do. So if you're ever making plans to do something, just find a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was kind of like 2 goals, but they were in the route. I was like, just find that one goal. Whatever thing you're doing, if it strays from that goal, either you want to change, that means you want to change course, or just that's going to get you there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that forced me to reach out, and everywhere I stayed up to Mobile, I was staying with friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I was staying for free, and it was absolutely awesome. Totally loved a great experience. So I got to Mobile, and I didn't know it was there, and I didn't want to drive straight to Austin. So I found out that my cousin Cole, she lived in New Orleans, which was great. So I found that out while I was in Virginia Beach. So certain things
my
you're
hometown,
traveling.
by the way.
Where?
Right outside New Orleans. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. We're in Louisiana.
Yep.
I wasn't a fan of going to New Orleans because I'd been there a couple times and I didn't really like it.
Okay.
This time was actually way nicer.
Nice.
But yeah, man, Mobile. I stayed in a hotel there, and then it was New Orleans, Houston. I stayed in Austin for about 4.5 weeks, where I was using Airbnb the whole time. Mm-hmm. Then I traveled from Austin to Phoenix, and I stopped twice along the way. And that road on Route 10 was so euphoric because I had this audio book that I bought about how to change your mind. And
what book was that?
it's called Your Wish is Your Command.
Okay.
So I'll just break that real quick. That book's amazing because they talk about the law of attraction, and which I've heard a lot. Like The Secret talks about it.
Yep.
Think and Grow Rich. It's all about thinking about where you are, and that's where I kind of got the how. Don't worry about the how. If you think about the how, you're never gonna get there. But think about what it is you want, and it's like you can only see life as a radar screen, and there's everything outside of the radar screen that you can't see yet, but it's coming at you, and you just if you really want it and have that strong, passionate why, you'll figure it out. Like you wanting to do this podcast, you just wanted to do it. You didn't know how, but now we're sitting here doing it, and you're like 13, 14 episodes in, or how many episodes in?
Something like that.
So 8 or something. So it's like you envision this and you feel it. So the book is about that. The only bad thing about it is the guy's name who does it. His name's Kevin Trudeau. So I researched him, and the guy actually was a big infomercial dude, and he's actually in jail now.
Oh, wow.
He's in jail for like the next 10 years. But
Damn.
he wrote this book about nutrition and how like the FDA and all this stuff, and they came at him and they threw him in jail. So I'm kind of on the fence about it, but what he talks about is so good that I was like, fuck, I'm sticking with it, because it really was very eye-opening. And I listened to an audiobook literally for 14 hours for that trip, broke it up into days, and I didn't listen to hardly any music. So that was really cool. I got to Phoenix, and then I was in Phoenix, then Marietta,
California.
San Diego, then Marietta, and then Manhattan Beach. Now Redondo.
Cool. So many things to talk about as you went through that. So you've used a couple of analogies so far in this conversation that are really similar to some of my favorite quotes or analogies, because you were talking about the radar.
Yeah.
And before you were talking about, you might not know how to get somewhere, but just start doing it and you'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
And there's a quote, I think it's by Martin Luther King Jr., and I don't know the exact wording, but
something about a dream or something.
There's the idea. That's a pretty popular one. I've heard about that one.
I think I've heard about that.
There's an idea of you don't have to see the top of the staircase to climb to the top of the staircase. You just have to see the first step and take that first step.
Yeah.
And then, as you take the next steps, eventually you'll see the top of the staircase. And there's another idea that's along the same thing as, you're driving a car, and perfect example for you, driving, all these hours from coast to coast. You can only see as far as your headlights are going to show you. But you still know that once your headlights hit the next spot, you're going to see in front of you, and you're going to see more. And so I think those kind of analogies are really great as far as getting people to realize that you don't have to see everything. You don't have to know the end game. You don't have to know what the full process is going to look like along the way,
Yeah, the main thing that I got from that audio too is it was just really, really, I think this is a big takeaway for anyone listening to this who's just, they're probably overthinking things and they probably want to jump out of what they're doing and do this. The main thing the guy says is just feel good now.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel good, change it. And I think that's like gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing something and you feel shit, if you're in a relationship, you feel bad, get out of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Stop making excuses. Oh, we have kids. I don't give a fuck if you have kids. Get out. Your kids aren't going to they're not going to be any better if you're in a crap relationship. If you hate your job, why are you staying there? Oh, I have to pay for this. You're going to find money again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, stop living for other people, and stop thinking about how. And it's like, if you feel bad, when you're dead, when you're on your deathbed and you're looking back at your life, are you going to live it for someone else? Or are you going to live it for yourself? Like right when I left, a friend of mine, Kara, she sat me down. We're in a bar and she goes, she's like, I read this thing recently, and this girl in the book said, if your life was a story, if your story was a book, would you want to read it? And it was like, God damn, dude, that's amazing,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you have to get rid of your ego. And sometimes mine gets my way. I'm like, am I just doing this in my ego? I'm like, fuck my ego, man. It's not about that. It's about just living. Because the moment I'm dead or dying, I want to look back and be like, dude, that was an awesome life.
Mm-hmm.
And I inspired people, or inspired myself, and that's what I really like about it. So it's like, when you feel good, you're doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel bad, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
100%. So stop doing that and stop giving freaking excuses on why, because you're only telling it to yourself. I don't give a shit. I mean, I care what people do, but if you don't do it, you don't have to sell it to me, man. Use your energy to do it instead of giving me excuses on crap.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like you were giving yourself excuses for a long time before you pulled the trigger on this nomadic life?
100%, man. I mean, I know all this stuff, and I'm sitting there like, dude, to do it, So I would go and I'd sit down with a pad of paper, and I wrote down what I wanted my life to look like. And I was listening to Tony Robbins, and that's how he planned his life. He was making $3,000 a month, and he said, I want to make $1 million in a year. I want to chauffeur. And he did this on a train ride through Russia for 3 days on the back of a Russian map. He wrote it out. I'm like, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it, and I wrote two things. I have my animation company, Drive 80, and I have my blog, Paleo Riot. Drive 80 was a paragraph, and then Paleo Riot was 15 pages. So I was like, all right, that's telling me something,
Cool.
And I just kind of followed that,
Yeah. Okay, so going back to another thing you were saying about, this guy that you listened to the audiobook, and how he's in jail, and you were like, okay, well, I'm going to ignore the bad parts of him and take away the good parts.
Yeah.
I think that's a really big takeaway too. There's a book that I actually did a podcast on this too, a book that really had a huge impact on my life, and I say actually changed my life in a big, big way. It's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker.
Yeah, I read that. We talked about that when we first started talking.
Yeah, it's such a good book, and in that book, I always recommend it to everybody, but I also tell people, look, he's a salesman and he's a marketer, and throughout the book, he throws in his marketing pitches for his other books and his other products and his seminars. And I actually went to the free seminar that corresponded with that book, and it was a 3-day thing that I got a lot out of, and it had some powerful stuff. But like, because it was a free seminar, about 80% of it was pitching his other seminars and products.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm not that I think, I know that turns people away, because they see that and they're like, oh, he's just trying to sell me stuff. He's a quack. He's a fake or whatever. And I think if you can look past those sales pitches and things like that and just take away the good stuff, I think you're going to get a lot out of it.
Absolutely.
So I think that's good that you were able to see past that. And I think that's similar with just humans in general, not just books or audiobooks or whatever. I think, if you can look past people's shortcomings in life, perfect example, Mike Spinner. I did a podcast with him, and I'm going to throw him under the bus. He's a retired professional BMX rider that now owns a company. I did an amazing podcast with him, and he's a guy that he's a little bit weird, and he's a little bit socially awkward, and he can say some things that rub people the wrong way. And I totally see how some people get put off by him. And he's a friend of mine, and I would tell him that to his face. And I hear other people that, badmouth him or might say, like, he does this, or he said this, or he acted like this, X, Y, Z. And I'm like, yeah, I see that. But I also see how he's building a great business and how, he does this, this, and this. And I just see the good things in people, And I'm not saying I'm a fucking model human being. And
I don't think anyone is, though.
Yeah, but I just didn't want to come across like, oh, I'm better than anybody kind of thing.
No, man.
But what I think is that if you can learn to see the good in things and just kind of brush off the bad things and not take it to heart so much, or not to let it hit you at such a deep level, I think you can get along with a lot more people.
Well, I mean, like, people dismiss the fact that Benjamin Franklin was like a womanizer or whatever, and these forefathers of ours did some shitty things, but we still, like, I
didn't know that, Ben. Old Benny was a player?
Yeah, I think he was a douchebag. Apparently.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are like total cocksuckers, but
wow.
But yeah, man. I mean, like you said, that's like the thing too, is that if you live your life thinking negatively, you're going to attract negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing I took away from this thing was that, when you think about what you don't want, like, I don't want to be poor, I don't want debt, I don't want this. When you're saying that, though, you're attracting that debt. You're attracting those things. And that's something I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So I said for years, I said it out loud to people, I said, I don't want to be divorced. I never want to be divorced. I never want to be divorced. And here I am, and I think that it was, and I was talking to someone the other day, and I was like, I feel that the divorce was kind of like, if you think of my life as a slingshot, it was slowly pulling it back. And then when I got to that point, it should have launched me, but it slowly pulled back a little bit more. And then all of a sudden there was this thing, and I let go, and it just catapulted me into where I need to be now, and this is all the things I need to be. So you have to see the positive. Even in really shitty situations, you have to see the positive.
Yeah. And I think with what you were talking about of, what were you just saying? I was gonna.
Don't think about something like, you can't think, I don't want this, or
right.
negative on that.
So with that negative word, the don't in front of whatever you don't want, along that lines, and I know this was in The Secret, which another movie that I think really had an impact on me, and I used to watch it like at least once a year, and I haven't watched it in a while. I think I let somebody borrow the DVD, and I don't have it.
You can get it it's free on YouTube, actually.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should link that up on the show notes as well, so you guys can look for that if you haven't seen The Secret. But they had a great thing about Mother Teresa where she said, I'll never go to an anti-war rally, but if you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. And I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. You know what I mean? Like, focus on the positive. Don't focus on not doing the negative.
Yep.
You know. So let's talk a little bit more specifics now about your financials going into this nomadic journey. I don't even know what to call it, but we'll just keep using those type of terms or whatever.
I know it's hard to. Everyone's like, "Oh, your trip, your travels." I'm no, man, this is life now.
Yeah.
Like, going back home, that's vacation.
Right. So your current life right now, you said you made about $3,000 selling stuff like your couch and your TV or whatever. So let's talk about how much did you have saved up? How did you mentally and financially prepare? Not mentally. How did you
Financially prepare to do it?
Yeah, prepare your finances, or what mindset did you look at your finances with in order to do this?
I thought of it like this. So this is where the difference is. This is where people are gonna go, oh, is this? So I own a company now. Before you start going, oh, that's why. I don't make a lot of money with my company. I used to be a freelance graphic designer, web designer, and all this other stuff. And I own an animation company. I've had it since 2012. So I have clients, but I get like one maybe every other month or something like that. And like we charge a good amount of money, and I take a portion of it to put into the company. So I don't take that much back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really not making that much money. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day. He thought my company was worth like millions of dollars, and I started laughing. I was like, I must be doing something right for you to think that, and I really got to play off of that because that's a good thing. But I don't have a lot of money. So the $3,000 I made, I put that into my personal account, and then the business account that I have, I'm able to utilize that for living costs because I'm traveling and all that stuff. Maybe I'm not doing it right, but I'm just like whatever. So I left. I think I had about $5,000 total across the board. And as I'm going along, I still have clients and we still take on projects, but I really stepped back on marketing my company because that was another reason I fell out of love with it. So that's why I'm keeping the lights on, but I'm focusing more on I'm doing like health coaching and all this other crap. And so that's like where my feeling good is shifting to. So I'm kind of in this thing where I should really be prospecting right now because the way when you prospect, you're doing it for 3 months from now, not for next week. So in 3 months, it might get a little dicey, but I'll figure it out.
So you pretty much left with like $5,000 on like a permanent trip.
Yeah, but I also had like projects in the air, so I still had a final payment coming in, and I have on the road I sold 2 more projects, which that'll probably carry me through to August maybe or September, and I got to figure it out a long way. So I'm really kind of like, it's like I'm throwing the cast out and grabbing a month or two and pulling myself towards that until I get to the next one. So it's like I'm not going year to year indefinitely.
Let me ask you this. Did you have investments or retirement accounts or other type of vehicles that you were like, okay, I've got this money stocked way in the back that if shit hits the fan and I absolutely need it, I can fall back on this?
Man, yeah, right. I probably have more debt. I'm in, I've got a lot of debt just from taxes and things like that,
Okay.
So it's like I have to figure out along the way because I'm still building to the point of building another company, and I want to turn that into something where I am going to make money, But I'm just not thinking about it, and maybe it's backwards of being 36 years old and trying to think that way, and everyone's like you should have a family, you should have a house, you should have this. And everyone I know who has that, usually they're pretty depressed and they're upset, and debt's going to be debt. And I was out of debt for a while, and I just have the mindset of I'm utilizing the philosophy of feeling what it's feeling like to not have debt. I'm not going to not do anything about it and just sit down and be like, it's just going to come to me. But I'm going to think more of it like that because when I start thinking if I don't want to be in debt, it's going to keep me in debt.
Right.
So it's,
Yeah, so and I'll just kind of give my take on that as well.
Yeah, because you're like super organized with your charts. We were talking before, like you keep receipts. So how?
Yeah, I'm super organized and really methodical. So when I left my full-time job, which has now been going on 3.5 years, I didn't have any work lined up ahead of time, and I didn't have any offers or anything. So
why'd you do it?
I just needed out. It wasn't right. It didn't feel good, and that's a whole long podcast on its own right there, which I probably talked to and touched on that topic a few times on different podcasts already. But when I was looking at leaving, my finances was, okay, I've got X amount of dollars in my savings account. I've got X amount of dollars in my checking account. I've got a 401k account that I think at that time had probably about $19,000 in it. And then I had like another investment account that had a little bit of money in it that I was kind of trading some stocks back and forth and whatnot. And I was like, okay, well, based off of my detailed Excel spreadsheet that I keep, I know my monthly budget. I know how much money that I need per month to pay for my part of the mortgage because I had a roommate at the time that was helping pay the mortgage, and to pay my HOA fees, my cell phone bill, my electric bills, cover all my expenses. So I knew what my expenses were. I knew exactly how much money I had into each of these different accounts. And of course, I didn't want to go into my 401k or my investment accounts and stuff. But I was like, okay, the worst case scenario, if I don't make another dime for the next, I think it was like 6 to 7 months, I would still be okay. And at that point, at 7 months or whatever, I would have to dip into like, my retirement account. And I was like, dude, 7 months is a long time. Like, I'm a hustler. Like, I'm going to make some fucking money.
Hell yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to make it. I don't see the top of the staircase,
Right.
but I see that first step. And the first step was quitting the job. Or maybe the first step was, looking at the finances. Next step might have been quitting the job. So I was really methodical about, looking at my finances and planning and budgeting and stuff. And thankfully, I got into a position where I had work coming to me right away, and everything was great, and I did very well after I left that job. But I did plan it out. So it's just interesting to hear your take on that and kind of what you did. And
yeah,
I think
it's so opposite.
Yeah, but
so
that's why we're
opposite.
having this conversation. Well, that's why we're sharing this conversation, I should say, because I want people to not only see my experience, but see other people's experience that they can draw from and be inspired by, or maybe it just relates to them or resonates with them a little bit more.
Yeah, man, because I think that you have to have the two sides of here's the organized route, here's the unorganized route, and like granted, yeah, I could still make money on the road, and you could do the same thing. You could sell this place and go and travel. But it's funny because the opposite thing is like you've done a lot of traveling. You're like, I just want to be home.
Mm-hmm.
When I left, I loved being home. I didn't want to travel. I said it for years because when I was younger, I was in a band and we used to tour. And I was like, I never want to do that again. I never want to be in California again. Now I'm on the road. We're sitting in California. It's like, it's all this stuff. And I don't know.
So let me ask you this. When you started traveling, a couple weeks into it, I knew that you were on the road, and I knew that, kind of where you'd come from. And so I asked you, what have you learned, or like, what have been your big takeaway, or how has your life changed, or how has your perspective changed on something? I asked you that, and you kind of said something about like, it's not quite exactly what I thought it was going to be. Maybe something to that extent, or maybe something to the extent of, do you remember that?
I think so.
We were texting, and it was kind of like you were like, yeah,
find it.
Everything is kind of the same.
I might be able to find it on my phone. Actually.
The more I do this, the more I realize like how things are the same, and how leaving. Maybe what it was is that you were basically saying like leaving's not gonna make your problems go away.
I think of it this way. Everyone always says, yeah, it's gonna take forever to find it. My mom said to me one time, she's like, wherever you go, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
And a buddy of mine, there's a lot of people who questioned me when I was leaving. Not like they didn't really question me, or they didn't like, maybe they were at the back end. I don't know, but everyone's really positive, and they said, my one friend said, are you doing this to put it in your ex-wife's face? And I said, what the good thing is, I'm not. Like, because she wanted to travel about a year or two ago. She said to me, we should buy Winnebago and just travel the country and just live nomadically, which is kind of funny. And I said, nah, that just sounds like, I was like, that sounds too hard. Funny. And so I was like, no, I'm not doing this to impress her or win her back, because I know she's not coming back. And then my mom was like, are you trying to run away from yourself? And I was like, no, I know exactly. I was like, I'm trying to bring myself out, because right now that person has so much. It's like I feel like I'm carrying around I'm like always metaphorical. Like I feel like I'm carrying like a backpack with just like a ton of bricks in it, and every mile I go or every city I go to, I'm taking one more brick out and taking one brick out. It's like I'm kind of uncovering who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because I lost that person really badly in the last couple of years, and I'm like a really happy person and positive, and I think that a lot of negativity started getting to me, and I'm just slowly. I wanted to feel like Christmas Day every day. Like how excited you are when it's Christmas. I wanted Christmas to feel like Christmas again, because Christmas sucked this year, and Christmas sucked last year, and and Thanksgiving sucked this year. I mean, it was okay because it was my family and stuff, but I wasn't excited for it, and it's like you don't. Depression's really messed up, man, because you just don't look forward to the day. All you want to do is wake up, and you're just like, I just want it to be 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, so I want to go back to bed, and that happened for like 4 months. I would sleep for 10 hours. It's like I never went to bed. I was exhausted, and I was like, I'm not this person. I need to find this person again. So I think at the time when you asked me that, I was looking more at my surroundings and seeing kind of like, I felt I had to be further from New Jersey to really feel just separated from my life, and I think at that point I was too close.
Okay.
And plus, as I'm driving on the roads, all I'm seeing is Home Depots and McDonald's everywhere. And I was like, where's the culture? Where am I finding this culture?
Right,
You know?
right.
But I'm also driving to major cities, so I'm going to find that there.
Yeah.
So I think I was just looking for like this crazy thing. When I got to Austin, that was super culture. But
Yeah. Maybe that's kind of what the conversation was about. It was like, it wasn't quite as much of a culture shock as you had thought it was going to be or something.
I think that was it. I was like, everything looks the same.
Yeah, totally. It definitely does until you get into certain areas. Like you said, Austin's a cool place. Portland, you're going to love Portland once you get up there.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
So with that said, I guess what I was getting at is, what is your big takeaway? Like, what have you learned so far, or what have you learned about yourself? And actually, I'm sorry to cut you off again.
No,
Before
absolutely.
I answer that, I'm going to just kind of say my observation.
Yeah,
because
man. Because, I mean, you're like, you live your own rules too. Like, you're an entrepreneur and, you've had this cool job with like, BMX magazine and, and you get to know a lot of guys like Dave Mirra was on your show. Like, all these people who are like, God damn, that's awesome. So like you live this, when I saw your life, I was like, God damn, this guy lives a really cool life,
Mm-hmm.
And so what it's like to want to build your own life,
Yeah. So, when I first talked to you, it really sounded like you were looking for a direction and you were just kind of lost and you were trying to find something. And even when we had that text conversation, when you were like, yeah, everything's kind of the same. Like, I'm not quite sure that I'm finding what I was looking for almost is what you were getting at basically. And now that you're out here in California, it's been, 9 weeks now. You're talking to me about like, starting this new health coaching kind of thing. And you're starting, these videos that you're doing through your blog and you're building up your blog brand. And I'm just seeing a totally different side of you. Not that I saw you before, because this is the first time we met in person.
Yeah. Literally today, the first time we met in person.
But just from our conversations through text and email and the phone calls, it seems like you're a much more grounded and centered and focused and happy person than what you were even just a few weeks ago. It seems like you've got so much creative endeavors that you're like excited about doing. And today when we were eating lunch and everything, like you've surprised me at all the stuff you've been talking about, because I'm like, damn, looks like you got it figured out, man. Like, this is cool,
Yeah. It's pretty much, that's the tipping point was leaving Austin. The moment I left there and I was on that ride from Austin to Phoenix, it was just euphoric. I don't know what it was. It was just being in the middle of nowhere. When I started getting a civilization again, like Phoenix, I started getting like, I hated being around cars and people again, Not like I'm going to go, be like the, Ted Kaczynski and go live in a shack somewhere.
That is a long, boring stretch of road, man. I can see where that could...
It's not boring though, man. I think I was afraid the day leading up to that day, I kept saying to people, I'm like, yeah, man, I got to do that freaking drive. It's going to be 14 hours. Like, the moment I got on 10, it was just mountains in the distance, just no one anywhere. And the scenery changed every 5 hours, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I think listening to the audio I was listening to, because it was about mindset and it was about restructuring. And the guy said, while you're listening to this, I recommend putting on classical music because it's going to slow your thinking down. It actually makes you smarter listening to classical music because you absorb more and it slows your brain down. The scenery became my classical music, and I used that to my advantage to learn. And I almost became a sponge, and I soaked this stuff up. And I'd be driving. It was like I had 5 cups of coffee, but it was just oxygen, And from that point driving, I just got inspired, and all I wanted to do was just get back on my computer and, just do all the things I want to do. And I've just, my week, usually my calendar Monday through Friday, like I told you today, was just packed with random tasks. Like, I have to do this because I'm a business owner and blah, blah, blah. Now my calendar, literally, it's get to the gym in the morning. I block out like 3 hours in the morning. It's get up, go to the gym, come back home and meditate, make breakfast, and then do something else, and then open up my email. So I've been starting my day like 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
I know what that's
and
like.
And then I end at like 4.
That's cool.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome, man. So let's kind of talk about those experiences again. So, part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I think a lot of people listen to, motivational stuff from people that are, they've made it. They're like, they've made their millions. They've written their books. They've, spread their word. They're at the top, And for me, this would be like somebody like Tim Ferriss, who I really look up to and admire quite a bit.
Hell yeah.
He's traveled the world. He's done all this stuff. You are somebody that's in the very early stages of like, getting inspired, pulling the trigger, making something happen, going through these changes. So I thought that was a really cool perspective to show to people of like somebody that's in those beginning stages. I think maybe people can relate to somebody more like yourself. You know, like you said, you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
You've got $5,000 that you're living off of, and you don't know when the next paycheck's coming. That's more relatable than Dave Mara, whose net worth is $12 million. You know what I mean?
So to be more transparent, I have $1,000 in my bank account right now.
Wow.
I'm still waiting on checks to come in, which they are, but they keep getting lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like, yeah, like that's honest.
Yeah. And actually, while we're being transparent, I'm at an interesting place in my life. You know, this podcast, I talk a lot about finances and stuff, and nobody's really interviewed me about myself on this podcast yet and asked me about my finances, which I kind of assume that because I ask other people about theirs, some of my listeners might be like, well, what about yours, you know?
Yeah, break down like your whole, you know, because I think that they want to see someone, especially who's structured.
Yeah. I'm definitely very structured, but I'm at an interesting point right now where this year I decided I was going to not focus on trying to work as much in the BMX industry, and I'm going to try to pursue the CrossFit industry and branch out into other areas and stuff. And the nature of the freelance business is sometimes you don't know when that next paycheck's going to come.
Yep.
Sometimes that next paycheck is late or gets lost in the mail or whatever. And so right now, I do still have my separate accounts for separate things. But right now I'm at a point where I'm like, oh shit, like I need these next couple of jobs to come in because we're in May right now. I think in all of April, I don't think I had a single paycheck come in. And now we're at May 15th and I'm still waiting on one paycheck from earlier this month or maybe in the middle of April or something. And so between now and 30 days from now, I have probably about $12,000 worth of work that I'm going to do, but I don't have that $12,000 yet. And so I've been living off of what was in my accounts, and now I've got like $3,000 on my credit card, and my bank accounts are getting pretty damn low. And I'm like, oh shit, like these checks need to come in quick, you know?
How quickly, when you're doing work that you say you have $12,000 of work, how long does it take for that money to come in? Like, is it pretty quick with your clients, or does it take like a month, or like net 30, net 60?
I try to do 30 days max. Most people are really good about that. I've got one right now that's a little bit late. But yeah, I try to get it within 30 days. And I think I'm going to try to structure something new soon with my clients that I can either submit my invoices a little bit early, like right as the job gets booked or something.
Try this. I just learned this the other day. Give them two prices. Give them one and say, you know, let's say for a video shoot you charge, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw a number out, $4,000. Let's just say. Mm-hmm. So say, you know, for this video shoot for this weekend, it's gonna be $4,000. Now, if you pay up front, it's $4,000. We could split up into two payments, but it'll be $2,200 a piece. So now you're adding more price, and so they're like, wait a minute. So it'd be like if you pay it up front, it's actually gonna save you money, but if you spread it out, it's actually gonna cost you more.
Yeah.
And you could do that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start doing that.
I think I need to, for sure. Because I've had a couple of big jobs recently where I'm like just sitting here like twiddling my thumbs like, come on, mailman, like be the day, you know?
You have to also, you know, a thing that freelancers do is that we wait for work. Or, I mean, freelancers wait for work. Take the clients that you have and present them with ideas. I was talking to my buddy in South Boston. He has a company, and he was sitting around, and he was like, yeah, I got this client. I'm doing a lot of bowling alleys. I go, what do you do for him? He's like, I'll do this. It really worked out. I go, call him tomorrow and tell him you have an idea I'll be like, I have a year goal, and I have a breakdown for every quarter. Let's strategize. The guy was like, hell yeah. He emailed me back, and he goes, dude, I presented that to that guy. I went from making $98 a month with him to $338 a month.
Nice.
And he goes, and he gave me a referral to another bowling alley.
Cool.
So I think that's something that you should think about is there's so many CrossFits around here, and that's what you stick with. Like I said, build a package, make 3 tiers, go to them and say this is what it is. And if they balk at it, just be like, well, I'm going to go to the next one, you know, and just keep going around and testing it out.
Yeah, that's definitely something, and just to kind of fill in the readers or the listeners here, we did have a conversation kind of about these strategies and ideas and stuff for securing new work in my line of freelance business, and yeah, what you talked about is some great ideas, and I'm certainly going to act on some of them.
Yeah, man.
So you were curious more about kind of how I structure my finances, like
you know, my biggest thing is that I'm kind of living chaotically, let's say. Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot of overhead. My overhead is food, gas, place, you know, Airbnb. Mm-hmm. I've got a bookkeeper, things like that. But so and we were talking before, and you were telling me about you're like, yeah, man, I used Uber last night, and I put that in my spreadsheet. I was like, God damn. Mm-hmm. And I was almost inspired. I was like, all right, well, like you said, I want to meditate, and I'm like, just do it. So then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, I should just today I could literally start collecting receipts and just keep a spreadsheet and say this is what I'm spending.
So I've got a spreadsheet that I've started probably about 7 or 8 years ago, which is like when I kind of started what I call my financial journey. Like when I said, okay, I want to get serious about learning about money and accumulating wealth. I started this spreadsheet, and it's evolved since then. And it has a lot of different tabs. And I actually have like kind of what I call my blank master template that I'll give to anybody. I've posted it on my blog. You can download it there, and I'll post it again in the show notes here. But what it is that I have one tab that is my net worth tracking. On my master sheet that I give to people, it's all in one. For some reason, I keep it into 2 different sheets on my own computer, and one of the documents has a tab for my net worth tracking, and then also my monthly budget. For some reason, I don't put that on my other spreadsheet with everything else. But with the net worth tracking, my financial mentor, the first thing he ever told me was, if you want to accumulate wealth and you want to become rich, the first thing you got to do is track your net worth. And actually, I'm very close to securing a podcast with my personal financial mentor, which
explain that real quick. And
okay.
I also want to talk about mentors too, because that's a huge thing. But go back to your net worth. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a spreadsheet, and it has a column for all your liquid cash. So how much is in your main checking account? How much is in your main savings account? How much is in your investor checking account that might not be into mutual funds or stocks right now? So that's your liquid. Your secondary liquid would be how much is in your 401k or Roth IRA or CDs if you have that. So currently I have a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, and the traditional IRA was rolled over for my old company 401k. So those would be in your secondary liquid category. So that's money that you could create into liquid cash if you needed. Also, that would include stocks, which I don't have any of the stocks right now. I do have a separate personal mutual fund. Sorry, I'm getting all over the place here. So liquid is all your cash. Secondary liquid is your paper type assets. So Roth IRA, 401k, IRA, your stocks, any other mutual funds you have. So I have a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, and other mutual funds in a personal account.
Damn.
Then you've got your other assets, which would be real estate. So I've got my condo that I live in. I've got a 3-unit building in Michigan. And then I've got 2 single-family houses in Louisiana. So
really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So you put those, and the numbers you put in there is how much they're worth. And then, so that's all your assets. And then underneath that, you've got your liabilities. So how much mortgage do you owe on each of your places? So I've got mortgages on 3 of the places. One of the places I own outright in cash, so it has nothing there for liabilities. And then any kind of credit card you have, which typically I have 0 on my credit card balance because I just use it to build up frequent flyer miles on my airlines, and then I just pay it off. Currently, because I'm waiting on all these paychecks, I do have some money sitting on there. So if I was to track my net worth today, I would put in, whatever's on my credit card. If you have student loans or other kind of debt, like you said you owe some money for taxes right now, you'd put that in the liabilities area. And then basically you just subtract one from the other and it calculates your net worth. And so I've got it set up in this thing where I track it every quarter. So the left-hand side has the list of liquid, illiquid, and your other assets, your liabilities. The top has the quarters. And then as it goes down, you have like quarter 1 to the right of that, quarter 2, quarter 3. And so it goes on. And at the very bottom, it'll not only tell you your current net worth, but then how much percentage it's changed from the previous quarter or the last time you tracked your net worth. So I can see like, okay, in 3 months, my net worth went up 2%. Or I can go from previous year and say from January last year to January this year, my net worth has gone up 25% or whatever it might be.
Okay.
And so once you can see where you've come from and where you're going and how much you're growing, it just puts everything into perspective. And so when I started doing this, I had right at, I think, net worth of $14,000. And that was in maybe a tiny bit in a 401k plan that I had just started. And then the others was just my savings accounts and my checking account or whatever. It might not even been that much, really.
My head's going to explode.
It's like, yeah. So if you're in debt, then maybe you're actually going to have a negative net worth, which obviously you don't want. But at some point, if you're tracking that, then you can see, okay, I went from negative 18,000 to negative 10,000, now negative 5, and then now I'm at 0, and now I have a positive net worth, and then you keep growing from there. And so the percentage that I calculated the percentage because, everybody's so weird about talking about money. So currently the net worth is right at, I want to say like 270,000. And so over the course of 7 years, it went from like $14,000, I think it was, to like 270,000.
Okay.
Which is fucking amazing. You know what I mean? Like
Jesus.
the percentage of growth is incredible. And I'm not a millionaire yet, but I'm a quarter millionaire if you look at it like that, which is, to me, I know it's not a lot of money and it's nowhere near the goals that I want to be at, but it's pretty fucking exciting and it's motivating to see those numbers grow.
Yeah.
And the more you stay motivated, the more that shit's going to keep growing.
Yeah, I think you have to have an excitement too. I think the moment, because like as you're explaining all that stuff, my head's just kind of like, there's only so much that I can grasp until you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you start to know it, you don't know it completely, but you digest it a bit better.
Yep.
And I think that's what turns a lot of people away from finances, because it's so mind blowing and they start seeing numbers and they're like, and it takes effort. So I think that's what turns people off. And it's just like, it's like going into CrossFit, it's people see a WOD. They're like, my first WOD was, they were doing handstand push-ups and rope climbs. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, well, we're just gonna start you off on push-ups and sit-ups first, and then you'll do everything else.
Right.
So I think with finance, it's the same way. It's what's the in that gets someone to be like, oh, cool, like I got this now. And it's like, I just do this, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're doing that really well. Now let's add this in there.
Right.
Let's add that
and
on top.
That's I mean, CrossFit is a perfect analogy to that type of thing. Like people ask like, oh, what does Rich Froning do to train? Like, I want to do what he does. Well, he does that because he's worked his ass off for 20 years to get to that point.
Yeah, look at him.
You couldn't
day
start
one.
at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to see what he did day one.
Exactly. So right now I have my my master Excel spreadsheet that's pretty in depth, and it's really tailored to my needs. So maybe it wouldn't be best if you started trying to fill out every one of those tabs. But to go back to the whole master sheet, just to break it down a little bit more. So I've got one tab that has all my income. So any job that I do through my freelance work, I tell, the date of the job, the name of the number of the invoice, a brief description of the job, what company paid it was, or what company paid for that job. I also have a tab for the particular industry that it was in, so that at the end of the year I can organize it and say, 50% of my business came from BMX, or 50% came from CrossFit, or whatever it was. And that way, if you decide, hey, I want most of my income for you to come from your blog Paleo Riot, and you notice at the end of the year that most of your income actually came from your Drive 80 animation company, then you can adjust it like, okay, well, now I need to focus on this more,
Yeah, or you could say like, what did I do? What didn't I do?
Right.
In the other one, and I need to amp that
or
up.
you can look at it this way and say, okay, I'm seeing that in BMX, my average, because I'll do averages and average time per, like I'll put the amount I got paid, and then I'll sometimes write approximate how many hours I worked, and so it'll average like, okay, you made X amount of dollars per hour for this job.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the year, I can look and say, the videos that I made in the fitness industry paid me $5,000 per video, whereas the videos I made in the BMX industry only paid $500 per video. So then you can look and say, I did 40 jobs in BMX and netted, $20,000, and I did only 5 jobs in fitness, and I also made $20,000.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, which one is actually more profitable?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you can spend a fourth of the amount of time and make the same amount of money, then you can sort of readjust your plan of action accordingly. So I've got the income tab, then I've got the deductions tab, which I'll have a column that says, the type of deduction, whether that be transportation, airfare, meals, mileage, computer equipment, whatever, a brief description of what it was, the vendor that I bought it from, whether that be Amazon.com or B&H Photo or United Airlines or whatever, and then of course the date and then the amount of it, and of course at the bottom it calculates the total of my deductions. At the end of the year, I can organize that by category. So now I can see, okay, this year I spent X amount of dollars on airfare, I spent X amount of dollars on computer stuff or whatever. And when I give this to my accountant, it's like I basically just did his job for him,
I think the reason that I don't do any of this stuff is because I have a bookkeeper who does all this.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but
that works.
at the same time, I don't ever look at my P&L and break it down like the way you're doing it, you know? Because, again, I think that the financial difference between the two of us is that, like, you're a bit more on a pulling a lot more than I am scale, where I'm at the point where I'm like, well, I'm not making that much, so why even bother? Which is really stupid, because that's the most obtainable way to do this. Because if my expenses are low and I'm not spending that much money, it's a lot easier to start and focus on that, like you're saying. Yeah. So that's kind of dumb that I'm not.
So going down the list of tabs here, just kind of mentally going through it, I've got a tab for each one of my properties. So it'll say the electric bills for each one, the gas bills, whatever kind of bills I might have associated with it, and then any kind of income that comes in from the property. And of course, my property managers will give me a condensed down version of that at the end of the year. But it's still good to see it in my, particular organization, whatever. This year, since I got a dog this year, I made a tab for my dog only because I wanted to see, for the first year, like how much did I spend on this dog?
Yeah.
So that way next year I know to plan like X amount in my budget per month, on dog stuff, whether it be vet, food, whatever. And it doesn't have to be super accurate. But I figured, it takes a couple seconds to put this stuff in when I buy more dog food or take them to the vet. And I think at the end of the year, it's going to give me a good idea. Is it $50 a month that I have to budget, or is it $250 that I have to budget? That's a big difference,
Absolutely.
So the less that I have to guess, the better I can budget for things. And if I know that my expenses are X amount of dollars per month, that gives me a good gauge of how much I can save per month, how much I can invest per month.
How much you got to hustle.
How much I have to hustle. Exactly. That's the biggest one, is how much you have to hustle.
Yeah, it's like the fire under your ass.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Crap, man, I get this much. Yeah, sometimes I think people see that and they just like put their head in the sand. Like, I don't want to know.
Yeah,
I don't want to know this.
Yeah. So there's my master plan. Again, I'll for anybody that's interested, I think I have a blog post that breaks all that down. But I'll go ahead and link to that blog post, and I'll embed a link that you can download my master Excel spreadsheet. And of course, you can change it, alter it, and make it fit your lifestyle, So what else we have? We are at about an hour and a half here, so we're going to start wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of pick my brain about before we go?
Let me see. I don't know, man. Like, I think that I don't know, and I thought that like I said, when I reached out, your life just seemed like badass, and we learned a lot of stuff,
Well,
And I think, I don't know. I put a bunch of stuff that I was going to ask you about. I was going to talk about, like, you being a vegan, you not drinking, the travel thing we touched on to fitness. I mean, I'm just trying to think of things that like people may not have heard that you've done. Like, is there anything in the past where, because you've obviously talked about all these things. We've talked about being an entrepreneur. I don't know, man. Like, is there anything that like kind of reached out to you that like you think people would be really interested to be like, this would be really helpful? Like the majority of your listeners, like what's their makeup?
Great question. I don't necessarily know that yet, which is an interesting part of this podcast right now, because I think most of the people that have started listening have come from the BMX industry so far, because most of the guests, or at least the bigger guests that I've had, are professional BMX riders. So
you could probably break down their lifestyle though, because everyone, just because so people listening, like you guys are big into BMX, right? There's also your personal. So like, what is it about? This would probably be cool. Do you guys have like a comment section? Yeah, because if people leave feedback and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, I haven't
cool
left comments on. I haven't opened up comments on the website.
Oh, okay. Are you gonna do that or no?
Probably not. I don't know.
I was gonna say, like, because it'd be cool for you to understand like where they're coming from, because like why they're listening. Because I mean, granted, you're doing this because you want to do it, because you don't really. I think there's a point of having a business where you cater to your audience, to the point where you're doing a podcast where you're like, I really always want to speak about like what I want to speak about. And people
that's actually a really great point that I've kind of wanted to bring up on the show at some point. Is, I started doing this because I wanted to have these conversations. I've been wanting to talk to Dave Mira about what he invests in and how he's learned to manage his wealth and his money for years. But how could I ever ask him that just out of the blue? You know what I mean? I've had a bit of a relationship with him just through shooting photographs and stuff, but it wasn't the kind of relationship where I could just call him up and start chatting about investing. But if I say, hey, Dave, I've got a podcast where I'm trying to motivate and inspire people. Do you want to talk about your finances and stuff? Then now I can have this conversation. So really that was, a huge, huge reason why I wanted to start this. And it's an interesting learning experience for me, because now that I'm seeing that there is an audience that's interested and they're being positively impacted by it, now I'm starting to think about catering to them a little bit more. And so it's a fine line of, how much do I keep things totally authentic to just, I want to do this, and how much do I provide a service to whatever listeners might be out there,
You define your why, though. I think, you have to stick to your why. You have to have your one goal. So I think if it's just to inspire people, you stick to that. And then people will, the underlying tone will be inspiration, but that could be inspiring how to be better in money, how to get your ass off in the gym, like how to meditate.
Yeah, and so the whole thing was that I've always wanted to lead by example. I don't necessarily want to.
That's where we connected. I think you said that in your picture. You said, I'm going to lead by example. I was like, son of a bitch. That's what I put on my blog. Like,
Nice.
I totally dig this thing. I think, people learn by that.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it's been a really interesting learning experience, and then taking the podcast into business form, because I obviously I have the entrepreneurial type mindset, and I look at everything as a business. And so when I started this, of course, I realized like, oh, other podcasts make money and other podcasts have sponsors and stuff. And I just didn't really think that that was a viable thing anytime in the foreseeable future. And the second day after I launched it, like I sent out email blasts and stuff. The second day, somebody hit me up and asked about advertising opportunities, and so that got my brain turning about, oh, maybe I should set up this Amazon, affiliate link, which I've done, and I'm pretty sure I haven't made $1. I've ordered a couple things on my own from that link. I don't know if anybody else has, but at least it was a cool experience of learning how Amazon affiliate links work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So even if I don't make money from it, which I hope that I do someday. That was a cool learning experience. And I've had other people reach out to me about sponsorship opportunities. Some of them, actually one of them recently that I turned down because it was a non-vegan protein company. And I'm also getting support from a vegan-friendly protein company, Nutrisuma. But just seeing how quickly these opportunities kind of popped up, I was like, damn, like I should start thinking about this as a little bit more of a business. And that's not to say that, today I'm going to try to start making money off of it. But I think it would be dumb for me not to think about that,
You have to. I mean, you have to keep that in mind.
And my hope is that I can do it in a way that's still authentic. Like all the other podcasts I listen to, they have sponsors and they, do little advertisements, and they don't bother me at all. Like I realize that I'm getting good free content from them. So if I have to sit through 45 seconds or a minute of Tim Ferriss talking about a T-shirt company that he thinks is really cool, then no problem. You know what I mean?
Actually, it's funny. When I was driving down here, I was listening to I was listening to Joe Rogan through Stitcher, and he's just going through this list of sponsors, and I'm driving about 10 minutes on the road. I was like, motherfucker, I'm like, get to it. You know?
Yeah.
But then I took a step back, and I'm like, all right, man, that's how this guy, Joe Rogan also makes, I think, money off other things, but that's like how it works, you know? So I was like, all right.
Honestly, I've been a fan of Joe Rogan's podcast for a long time, and I do hit the fast forward button a few times, like, because let's face it, that guy goes on and on and on.
He was just like, oh, and this other sponsor, I was like, oh my God.
He can legitimately talk for about 20 minutes on just sponsorship, maybe even more sometimes.
Really? This is the first time I actually heard his podcast was today, and it was just sponsors.
Yeah.
And then I turned on Barbell Shrugged.
Yeah, you could leave Redondo and get to my house and still be on Joe Rogan's sponsors. It's
pretty
crazy.
much, yeah.
So hopefully, some sponsors will come around. Hopefully this will turn into something. And the hope is that I can keep doing it the way I want to do it, because I've been connected with so many cool people already. Like, yourself just being here, Steph Godreau from StupidEasyPaleo.com. These are people that if I didn't have the podcast, maybe I would have met them, but I wouldn't have had these dope-ass conversations.
Yeah.
And I've taken something away from every conversation. And obviously my hope is that other people take away things
definitely,
from our conversations as well.
Absolutely.
But, man, I've got some really cool guests in the pipeline. I don't want to jinx anything or tout or tease episodes too early because, I'm not sure when things will happen. But I've already been in contact with some really, really cool people that I'm super excited to talk to, and people that are outside of BMX, different industries, different countries even.
Wow.
And I just think the possibilities are endless, man.
Well, it's too, I think the one thing we learned from being in the whole entrepreneur thing, or just being in creative industry, is that this is creating, and like you're creating and you're editing and all that stuff, right? Like, think about when you're doing video, like sometimes you're like, God damn, it's going to take so long to edit. But like something like this, it's really quick. You get in, you just talk. It's like you're getting to know people, and you can just like export audio, and then of course it takes a little bit of time, but not as much time it takes to edit video, man.
That's true. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't realize how time consuming it would be. For every single episode, it's at least 6 to 7 hours.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
You're doing wrong.
Yeah, good question, man.
To edit the audio?
No, not to edit, just the whole process. So just to tell you and everybody else the process, usually once this interview is different because I actually didn't write up interview questions for you.
Right.
But normally, for a professional writer or a author or whatever I'm interviewing, I'll do a little bit of research on them. If there's another podcast that they've been on recently, maybe I'll look at that. If there's interviews that have been out recently, I'll look at those.
Oh, so that's where the hours start accumulating.
Yeah, exactly. So I usually spend about 2 hours researching the person to come up with interview questions that I think are good.
That's smart.
And they're probably questions that I could just think up off the fly, but I don't want to get lost and not have a direction. And I want each conversation to have a good, solid direction to it. So, for instance, the episode with Dave Mira, which I highly suggest everybody checking out, we started off for about 30 minutes. We talked about all his mindset as a champion. He's the most decorated X Games athlete of all time. He was just the top of the BMX world for the longest time. He's the most famous and highest paid BMX rider ever. And so for the first 30 minutes, we just talked about his champion mindset and his mentality when it comes to training and competing in competitions. The second half, we talked about his businesses. So, the bike company that he's co-founded, how he invests his money, some investment mistakes he made. So it was kind of half, sports, half business finance stuff. So that was a solid direction, but I had to come up with those questions, and you have to come up with a way to word the questions so that it's, kind of flows pretty nicely, which has all been a great learning experience for me. But the hours start to accumulate there. Then, of course, just setting up the equipment takes a little bit of time, getting the thing done. So I've always thought that I wanted to keep these at about an hour. None of them have been an hour. Dude, it's so easy to just keep talking to people. They're so interesting, and the conversations are dope. So the conversations will run anywhere from an hour and 15. Already we're now at about an hour 45.
Holy shit.
So then there's that time. And then on the editing side, there's not a lot of editing, but typically I'll go back and try to sort of relook at what we talked about, write up an intro. And I had been typing up an intro and then reading it, or kind of, doing the intro separate. This episode, like I said, is a little bit different. I did the intro on the fly with you here, and I don't think I'm going to go back and record a new one. And that was actually provided by feedback from some of the audience members. They wanted me to do a more natural sounding intro. They didn't like that it sounded kind of scripted or whatever.
Yeah. I think you could put in the words too. You could, like what I started doing the interviews on my blog, I'd go through it and I'd pick little things out. I'd be like, in this thing you'll learn this, this, and this, and I kind of put like a creative funky twist on it. So it's like, and why this person is in love with whatever it is.
Yeah,
and,
that's all part of the marketing and promoting it and
Yeah.
trying to reel people in and stuff. But yeah, so the process of putting it all together, doing the intro, chopping it all together with the intro music and the outro music, and then exporting it. And then now I've got it on YouTube because I heard that was a great way to get exposure, not only through search engines, but also with blogs that want to embed the post. So just and then uploading it and everything and creating the blog post within my website. It's just been time consuming, but it's totally worth it,
That's kind of where we want to get to. Again, it's a passion you had. You're not getting paid, and I think people need to hear that. You're not getting paid for this. It's like little opportunities are coming about, but sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And it's something you really like. It's like sometimes you just need a win, and that's like a total win.
Yeah, and it would be naive of me to think that this podcast, even if I don't make money directly from it, it would be naive to think that it won't help me in other aspects of my business life and financial life, because already I can see that if I do this with, say, CrossFit athletes or CrossFit company owners or BMX company owners, like I'm just going to be connected with the industry that I want to be paid by.
Yeah.
And I'm building relationships with those people in a really authentic way,
Yeah.
And, whatever exposure might come out of this podcast could help, reel in more jobs, whatever. So there is definitely strategy behind it and strategic thinking and kind of, loose marketing behind it right now. But man, it's been fun. With that said, we are getting kind of late on time here. And I always wrap up with my guests with a couple of quick hit questions, which are basically questions that I ask all the guests, pretty much the same things. I don't have them in front of me today, so I'm just going to go off the top of my head here. But can you let me know how you decompress?
Used to be drinking. So at the gym. Now it's just like, I actually decompress right in the morning. It's the gym and cooking. Cooking is my therapy. I love cooking, and I just got into it a couple years ago. I picked up Practical Paleo by Diane Filipino. I forget how to say her name, but that got me to love cooking because their recipes are so easy and they're paleo and they're absolutely amazing.
Cool.
Cooking is my total therapy. I just I put on Spotify. I crank music, and it's between super mellow or like fucking metal. Like it's all over the place. So I do that, and then in the morning it's going to the gym. And I recommend anyone who's going to meditate, if you don't go to the gym, just get up and do it right away and do it right before you go to bed. If you do go to the gym in the morning, come back home and do it right then because it is like intensified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So I haven't asked this question in a while. Do you have any little life hacks? And I don't really like that word, but I don't know how to ask the question otherwise. And so one of mine that I like, and I almost showed you this in the car on the way home from the gym just because for some reason I love this thing. I have this keychain that has a little popper thing. It's like two separate keychains. One side only has my car key. The other side has my house and storage room and mailbox key. And so when I'm in my car, I can pop off the other keys that I don't need, put them in the ashtray. Then when I get out the car, I only have my car key. So it just kind of like saves space in my pocket and don't have this big bulgy key thing in my pocket.
Right.
And not that I would, knock on wood, if I ever lose a key, then it's not going to be all my keys. It's going to be either my car or my house keys or whatever. And if I don't need my car key, then I just leave the car key at home and I only take, the keys that I need or whatever. And for me, and the idea for me is that it just kind of makes my life simpler and a little bit less hectic, or I don't know, maybe that's a bad way to word it, but I just feel like it simplifies my life. It just declutters my life and my mental space of knowing that I only have that one key in my pocket that I have to deal with. So I'm curious, do you have any little life hacks that maybe you've discovered something new on the road?
Yeah, I've got two actually, and that might trigger some more. One of them is how to, when you hang up long sleeve shirts, how they get the little dimples in the shoulders.
Okay.
If you take the shirt and you fold it in half, right? So now the sleeve and the shirt makes this V.
Mm-hmm.
Put the hanger in that V and then fold over the hanger, and it keeps that from happening.
Okay.
I saw that online. That was cool.
Nice.
Another thing, if you're traveling on the road, I didn't want to get rid of my knives, and I was going to spend $100 on a knife bag, and I was like, screw this. So I took cardboard, I sandwiched it, put my knife in it, and I clear taped it, and actually it's kept with. So for 9 weeks now, that's where I've kept my knives in.
Cool. Yeah. I was going to ask you because you mentioned knife before. So you do have some pretty good quality knives and stuff.
Yeah, I've got a what's the name of it? It's some German knife. It's also the W. It's super popular. It's people who know knives are gonna be like, oh my god, I can't believe it doesn't know this. But I haven't had to sharpen it in 2 years.
Awesome. Yeah.
Here's a quick one. Here's how you keep your blade from dulling. When you're cutting it up, don't move the food towards you with the blade. Turn it over on the back, on the back of the blade, the
backside of the
backside of the knife, and use that. That's a tip.
Yeah. A chef friend taught me that earlier this year, actually. So my buddy, Chef Kate's from Chef Kate's Nut Butter that I told you about. She's a professional chef and has a really cool culinary background. And earlier this year, I wanted to take a kind of a cooking class from her. I wanted her to teach me some skills, And actually, it was while I was in Singapore. She knew that I wanted to do this, and she knew I wanted to step my game up. And she sent me a link to a website with some really dope knives. It's this high-end knife company website or whatever. She's like, hey, they're having a Black Friday sale. Get one now, And it was 40% off or something.
Whoa.
So I got a pretty nice. I think I paid $150 even with the 40% off or something. This really dope high-end Japanese knife, and dude, it's a game changer when it comes to cooking for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cooking tools are huge. Wusthof, I think that's the name of it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're getting into cooking, buy a good knife, a good cutting board, a heavy cutting board, so it doesn't move everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to step up my cutting board game. I have 3 small bamboo ones, but they're pretty small and pretty lightweight. I need a big, good, heavy one.
I'd give you mine because I never cut any meat on it. It was all vegetables. But it's I should probably get rid of this thing already. But I swear to God, dude, it is 20 pounds.
Oh,
and
shit.
It's 4 inches thick. It's amazing.
Wow.
I can't get rid of it.
So I think the name of the website that I got my knife from was Korin. I want to say KORIN.com.
Okay.
I'll look it up and I'll post that in the show notes too. So if anybody out there is trying to step up their knife game, you'll have a good resource recommended by a professional chef.
Take a knife class. It's worth it.
Okay. Yeah. I just took my little class from Chef Kate one day when she showed me how to cook some chili and stuff.
Yep.
So I have a couple other quick hit questions that I ask people. One of them is kind of funny because I asked people, if there was a movie made about your life, what would be the pinnacle of the movie when your life changes or whatever, and you overcome an obstacle in order to achieve your success? And for you, I already know what that was, and that would be the divorce. We already talked about that.
100%.
What other ones do I have on there? I don't know. I think we're good, man. We talked for a long time. I think we had some great conversations, and once again, I say it pretty much every episode. This is why I started a podcast, is because I wanted to have conversations just like this. I wanted to record them, and I wanted to share them with the world. So I'm going to wrap up here with all my outro stuff. So once again, if you guys want to help out the show, go to theexpansionprojectpodcast.com, click on the Amazon banner, and go to Amazon, bookmark that banner. So every time you go buy something with your dope Prime account that everybody has now, thank the Lord for that. Every time you buy something, just go through that link, and it'll help out the show. Also, on my website, or on the show's website, I should say, there's an Amazon link in the header, and that goes to a little store that I put together with a bunch of the products that I personally use. So it goes everything from the type of BMX gloves that I ride in, to the type of protein that I use, to the lentils that I cook every day for lunch, to the oatmeal that I cook every day for breakfast. All that stuff that I use on a regular basis is on there. So if you're interested in some of the things that I use, they're on the store. Of course, click through, buy them, and it kicks back to the show. Again, please tell your friends about the show if you like what you hear, if you're inspired. Share this episode, post up the links on your social networks. It really means a lot. And, of course, leave those iTunes reviews. I'll keep reading some of the reviews here on the show and giving you guys shout-outs. So if you want to post your Instagram or Twitter handle on there, feel free. Shameless plug, no problem there. What else? I forgot about your stuff. So, again, thank you to Michael Doyle. Mike, for coming out and hanging out here today. Hopefully I'll see you again before you move off to the next part of your journey.
Yeah.
And tell people your social networks, your websites, your companies. Where do you want people to go to find out more about your stuff?
If you want to check out the animations, it's drive80.com, drive80.com. Our focus right now is just companies that are helping the world. So that's like my main focus. I want to, people are doing, green initiatives, nonprofits, things like that. And then my other website is Paleo Riot, PaleoRiot. That's more of my where I'm shifting to, where I'm starting to do some like health and wellness coaching. But really, it's just very raw stuff about my life. And I'm posting a video once or twice a week that I've been keeping road documentaries of myself talking about where I'm at. So I'm about a month behind. I got to edit those a bit faster. So check that out. Twitter, it's Paleo Riot NJ. And then Facebook, I believe it's just facebook.com/Paleo Riot. And Instagram, if it's the Mike Doyle, _ Mike Doyle, it's DOYLE, Irish. That's pretty much it, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And of course, all of my social networks are just at Fat Tony BMX. I do have social networks for the Expansion Project. I really haven't started using them yet. So far, I'm still going through my own personal channels and stuff. It seems like, I've already got an audience there, so I don't know if I'm quite ready to start building up the social network for the show. Hopefully, it gets to the point where I can build that up and, we get there.
Make it a group, not a page. If you do a Facebook, people congregate to groups. So they feel like they're part of something.
Cool. Good idea. I do have a page already, I think. I don't know if it's a group or a page. Whatever the case, nothing's really in use yet. If you guys want to go start following it now and kind of get up ahead on the game, maybe I'll start posting some stuff there.
And that's where people can comment about what they like.
Yeah, but so far people have been commenting on my personal pages, which I freaking love it. So thank you guys so much for that. And I think that's about it. If you want to follow my dog on Instagram, that's at Life of Hercules. He's cute as fuck. He's so cool.
He's gigantic now.
Yeah, he is a monster of a Yorkie. And I guess we're going to wrap it up right there. So thanks a lot, guys, and we'll catch you next time.